now, so we are live, everybody, and I'm gonna see if we're live on the phone.
Well, it'll come through my phone too.
Yeah.
I get a notice.
Just, I want to,
Make
look
sure
at
that,
it.
make sure the, sound is going.
Yeah, it is going. That I can clearly see.
Oh, okay.
Social media, YouTube. It is not going live at this point, but
Sometimes it may take a couple minutes or.
yeah, well, that's what I wanna see.
Yep.
I know they've had problems back and forth, and I know Julius was out sick yesterday, so I don't know. We are recording, so at the very least, it'll go tomorrow night, so. I'm going to, and he isn't here, so I'm gonna actually bring our information up. If I could get everyone to stand, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, and we'll do a roll call. I'm gonna see if I can get Danielle on the line here. I'm having an issue with the phone, so I'm gonna try it this way. There he is. Hi, Chief.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi.
By the way, is your computer with you?
I have it in my hand.
We're not showing, I'll bet, are we?
I have not turned it on.
Oh, well, okay.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Alright.
Because it's in my hand doesn't mean it's on.
Alright. Well, while I got you there, we're getting ready to take a roll call right now, so I'm gonna start with you.
Danielle Maurice is here.
Okay?
Lisa Gatra?
Mike Beaulieu.
Peg Hurd,
Bob Carrier.
Larry Brown.
Colleen Burnham.
And Humphrey Williams, so we have a quorum. And in the public, we have Mr. Doug Shute. And we also have Chief Kraus here to do a presentation tonight on employee retention plan. Richard can do it one of two ways. I actually have it here on the screen, or you can do it on that computer. If you wanna do it on my screen, me showing it on the screen as you do it, then I'll just have to plug my computer in. That work? Okay.
You can do it from yours.
Alright, I'll do it that way, and then we can, I won't have to switch it afterwards. Like I said, I don't believe we're getting recorded, I mean, we're recording, but we're not broadcasting. So I will bring that up. Which do you wanna start with? You wanna start with this piece? All right. Floor is yours. And thank you for coming too.
You're welcome. So everyone got a copy of the employee retention plan, right?
Yes, I did forward it out there.
Okay, perfect.
By what, email?
I sent it out in email, yeah. That would have
Do you
been.
have a hard copy with you?
I have a hard copy with me. Would you like me to make a photocopy?
Please.
Okay,
See if I can get
you
it
do that.
delivered.
I'll take one too, Chief. Mine home.
Yeah, I didn't make extra copies because I knew we were doing.
I got my mask on.
I have a mustache now. You're a wise guy.
I stopped printing everything, cause I never know what would, I get here and it changes anyway.
That's kind of why I've kept it until the last minute on certain things now.
I printed 30 pages and it changed the next day.
Yep. Well, while we're waiting, The one thing I wanna make sure, because I know, like I said, we're broadcasting, is for everyone to know at home that, Chief Kraus, Town Administrator Ernie Kreveling and I had met on this earlier this summer, and I know the Board of Selectmen worked to put together this employee retention plan and pay plan. And we've been working real hard as a budget committee to try to make sure we come in with an equitable plan, one that comes in right now under the default budget so that it's fair for the taxpayers. And one of the things that we struggled with was the fact that salaries, as we talked about this year, had changed even though we were under the default. But when you looked at any of the records, it showed the salary from 2018. So we asked for that this year, as everyone in this room knows, to show what the differences are. Well, default budgets can't change if you don't have a retention plan, an employee pay plan. And this the employee pay plan, I gotta take this down to talk, would make it equitable for the employees themselves. Their salaries would fall under a certain step plan, and they would get that taken care of each and every year without having to figure out how to negotiate what might be available to them. So by doing that, it also makes it easier for the taxpayers to know exactly what we're getting. And it follows with the default budget. So the town, it's equitable for the town, it's equitable for, as far as the taxpayers go, and it's equitable for the employees. So Chief is gonna explain all that as far as how they came to this particular plan, and this will end up on a warrant article for the vote in March. So, we'll go from there.
Yeah, these new salaries would show up in the default budget.
Anything in the pay plan, the default budget would show them. That's the big piece of that. So we're not guessing what's everyone's salaries right now. It would be there.
And then showing up as 9.8%
Correct.
over 3 years.
Correct. Now, what I'm gonna do is, seeing as to how we're gonna be switching to that, I'm going to swap cameras here. I don't know which one I gotta do it with. Camera 3. There. So. When they do get to see the recording. Danielle, did you find out if it's airing?
It is not on.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with that. It was live 2 days ago, but I know they've been having problems intermittently off of this.
Is this the new equipment, or is this
This
still-
is the new equipment. I don't know if it's an Atlantic Broadband issue or if it's the equipment issue or what, but I know that Julius had been working on it and was going back and forth with with Atlantic Broadband and that to try to figure out why, and it was working for about a week or two. And apparently, and again, we'll be able to get it so it gets published after the fact, but that doesn't help people that wanna go out and see it live.
I'll vote for A, B, and D.
Yeah. I am going to.
Thank you, Richard.
Who else wanted to go?
I think Doug did.
Like this one.
Do you need a copy, Peg?
Until my hands up.
Yeah. All right, all set?
I am.
All right. So, just a little history before we go into this. I think if we look at, we can use my department, I guess, as an example. So I've been here in town since 2001. I guess we'll say every 3 to 5 years, we find that we are either A, losing a lot of employees due to salaries, or because we're falling behind, or we have pay and retention issues due to employees at the police department. 2003 or 2004 was the first time we went to the residents to ask to correct their wages for the police department. The residents overwhelmingly supported it, passed it that year, and pushed the wage change through in 2003, 2004. After that, there was no step plan in place, so we again started to fall behind. You have default budgets, you have people leaving, you have new people coming in, but things are not changing. It's not changing the base rate of pay, it's not competing, and it's not keeping up with the changes in society. Takes again until 2014, when we then push the next warrant article. In 2014, we passed that warrant article. We start the baseline step plan for the police department, which all of you have seen in the budget presentation. The baseline step plan went in with the 2014 warrant article, gave us starting pay, certified first year, third year, and fifth year. Those items all fall into the default budget. So the officer will automatically get those in those years only. Every officer outside of that 5-year window only gets whether or not the change is made through the regular budget. So in 2014, it set new rates for the lieutenant, the chief, the sergeant, and the corporal, but it didn't actually build a step plan for them. So the step plan that you all see, other than for the officer level from year 1 to year 5, everything else is just a placeholder year. That's what I'm suggesting and telling the residents that I'm going to be asking for when my officers meet that plan and meet that step for that year. So it's just a placeholder, it doesn't fall into anything, and it doesn't lock us into anything. The problem is then we have the highway department has a completely separate step plan from the police department. The fire department has a completely separate step plan from the police department and the highway department. All of our plans are different, and all of our plans have been in different stages of approval from the residents. So that is the other part of it. So they're all in different stages of approval. And then you have the administrative portion, mostly here in this building, but also for the library and also for some of the administrative assistants. They all have no step plan whatsoever. So their wage changes are whatever comes before the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen then decides that they're gonna correct wages here, correct wages there, and then you start to run into problems when you do it that way, because then you're unfortunately picking and choosing whose wages you're gonna fix in what year. And then if you start fixing wages in default years, it sets you up for failure and kind of sets you 2 years behind when you start fixing wages in a default year. So this was, and history-wise, we've tried to do something like this and tried to put it together multiple times. Chief McGowan, prior to me, had one of these written, I think in 2008, 2009, tried to bring it before the board, wasn't something that was going to go before the boards and pass and push forward. Don't know why it didn't have support, but it just never got off the ground. We've been trying to put one together and trying to ask for one to try and have it so it's a town-wide plan. It has some type of equality to it, and it has steps and grades. So it shows you when you get hired, this is your step, this is your grade, this is where you can move to. And it also allows us as employees, but also as department heads, to say, if I have an officer that comes in with 10 years experience, I can go and say, okay, he's got 10 years experience. If I can put this in my budget, this is where I can bring him in at, and I can show you he has this much experience, so now I can bring him in. Whereas right now, the top of my scale is a 7-year officer, and it's $25 an hour. So for the top of the scale officer, they're not gonna come to Milton for $25 an hour when they can go next door and make a lot more money just walking through the door. At almost at the starting pay to just come through the door.
True.
So this plan was put together by employees, with Ernie's help with the employees. We got employees from each department they got together, they evaluated the current step plans that are in place, and they also did evaluations on plans from outside communities. They pulled outside communities, and they pulled those plans, and they started to look through those plans to see what could be used here in town. They didn't go high level, they didn't go completely low level, they tried to stay as median as they could, and they picked plans that they felt were similar to what could help the town, but also were easily explained and easily viewed by residents if a resident wanted to look at that plan. And I think when you see the back few pages of this plan and you see the steps and the grades, how they're broken out and how you can follow that trail and follow where you're going to fall into if you're a starting level employee in that step and that grade, and what you need to do to get to those points to move forward. The salaries that would fall below range in the step plan, those would then be, we would take a 2 to 3 year point to get them to where they're supposed to be. So if you use me for an example, if this plan was to be implemented, I am coming up on my 9th year as chief. So I'm coming up as 20 years as an employee of the town, but 9 years as chief. So I wouldn't drop in at 20 years because I haven't been a chief for 20 years. I've only been a chief for 9 years. So I would move into step 9 as a chief. Well, that's a big step for the town. So because that's a big number, that would be broken out over 2 or 3 years to get me to where I'm supposed to be at that point, to make sure that we're not saying, okay, that's a huge number, we're gonna drop that huge number and drop $150,000 increase on the town in a single year. You're spreading that out to get the plan in place and then to spread that out over that time span. So that allows you to get people where they're supposed to be, but not have a huge impact to the town and to the taxpayers, to get people where we should have them in the plan.
I am quite confused, I guess, because you have steps going down, and I'm looking at you, or the police department. You have steps going down, but then you have steps going across. What
So
do
you
the,
have grades going down and you have steps going across.
Right.
okay, so those are grades,
Yes.
even though the word step is on the top?
Yes, so if you look at,
So you're grade 29,
if you look at this form, it shows your grades, and then it shows you your steps across the top of the page.
okay, so who's a grade 30 at step 20? I want that
So,
job.
we don't have any grade 30s currently employed by the town.
Well, what constitutes a grade? Alright, maybe I should let you keep going and then because I have a gazillion questions as usual.
Ask them while we're going, I'm fine with that,
You
So
sure?
yeah.
The
Okay.
The grades are, you're from secretary all the way to chief, right?
Correct.
Right, those are your-
that one,
Your positions.
Positions, right,
Yeah.
the positions fall into the grades.
Yeah.
and then the steps are the number of years that they've been here, I'm assuming.
Correct, and the steps, you move on to a step based off of a satisfactory evaluation. So each department that has specific changes, so my department has specific types of evaluations that obviously don't meet the same standard as the town's evaluations. So obviously, you wouldn't take my evaluations and try to give them to someone who works here in this office because it wouldn't be fair to them. Just like taking a broad-based town evaluation and giving it to me for one of my officers, it's really not, it's not a true evaluation of what the officer is actually doing on a day-to-day
I was
basis.
gonna say, the expectations are, night
Are
and
different
day,
and
yeah.
the job tasks are different, so
Right.
those types of things. So,
And
yeah,
if I could,
the evaluation plan.
if I could on this one, of course, you got, and on the screen, because and I'm only talking because I know they're not seeing it live, but so Danielle understands too. On the screen right now, I've got the scale that shows the grades 1 through 30 with steps 1 through 20 across the top, Danielle. You guys took all of, and I guess that's what I'm saying, because you explained this earlier. You took, like, the police, you took the fire, you took public works, and you took all the other plans and put it all into one big plan and then figured out where employees fit grade-wise,
Correct.
okay? And then you also got that based on experience and time in job, they're gonna come out in certain step levels,
Correct.
so. That's on the very first page.
So,
Okay.
in looking at this, when you see the job description, and the job description will then explain the grade as well, that your starting grade for, or the grade that the job descriptions will be built into. Which will then allow you to, both as an employee and as a resident, if you're coming to find out, okay, well, what are we paying this position? Okay, well, you're paying the chief of police, grade 29, he's got 9 years, you come across to step 9, that's what you're paying the chief of police. That's obviously not what you're paying me right now, but if this plan was in place, that's how you would figure out what that would be, and how you would deal with that, and what the officers or what the employees are making. It makes it, in my opinion, it makes it simple,
Mhm.
because then you have the tasks, you have the grades, you have the step that they should be at, you can look at how many years they've been employed, and if they've met satisfactory steps, then they can meet those standards and they can move to those points.
Yep.
Obviously, if they don't meet a satisfactory evaluation, they don't move to their next step.
Mhm.
It's as simple as that.
Alright, my next question.
Go ahead.
Looking at the overall, between the steps, 2%, but then grades, it's 5.7% between each grade. I mean, I'm sure you can talk about going from grade to grade to grade via the police department. So I'm a part-time, I'm at grade 15, but then I move up to a grade 19 because I now become a full-time officer. I get a $450,000 increase because I go from a step 15 to a step 19. And let's say I'm on step 3. I'm just trying to
Okay.
figure this out.
Okay.
Peg, say that again for a second.
Okay,
So
I
you're,
start out
Are you thinking
as-
out loud, cause it's confusing?
you're starting as a part-time officer, correct?
Right,
Okay.
and so I'm on grade 15, and I wanna get the terminology correct here.
So you're at grade 15 as a part-time officer,
Right, and I'm, let's say, step 3.
okay,
So I'm now making $19.34.
correct,
I all of a sudden become an officer.
Yep.
And I go up to grade 19. Would I move up a step, or, I mean, I know I'd move up a grade.
so you would move to step 1 of 19,
Right.
because you're now becoming a full-time police officer.
You start
So
all
your
over again.
qualifications are different,
Okay, but I still go from
19,
19 to
34, 23.
23.
Yep,
correct?
your responsibilities and everything else increase, so
Okay,
duties and responsibilities increase, you're gonna get paid according to what those new duties and responsibilities are at the starting point.
So going from part-time to full-time in the police department wouldn't carry over, your years of service in part-time wouldn't carry over to your full-time service. Because you don't have that same certification. You have a part-time certification, which only allows you to do certain number of hours. Plus, we are not, from my department only, you're not gonna work enough hours to have the same responsibilities as a full-time officer. So once you become the full-time officer, those responsibilities are going to increase immensely.
or
But-
would that be the same thing going from a full-time officer to, I'm being promoted to a corporal? Would I go back to step 1
Yes.
as a corporal?
Yes, because
Okay.
that's your first year as in that position.
Okay,
So
alright,
the qualifications of that position are, you're going from that officer position to the qualifications of that corporal
Okay.
position.
alright, thank you, that,
Chief,
rather than
I know
just looking
Larry's
at
got a
this thing.
question too, Chief.
To move backward in history, the Federal Department of Labor years ago did a task analysis matrix. It worked with people, data, and things, 1 to 9. 1 was entry, 9 was the highest skill. So then you had the task analysis, then you had time in grade. So each of these is still do you work mostly with people? 9. Do you work with data? 0. Do you work with things? 0. If you get somebody who is then a 955, they work with people, they work with a medium amount of data, they work with a medium amount of things, they get a higher score. So it's just that same matrix that is being used now. Somebody with more skill goes to the next step, but they haven't been to the next step, so they start at 1.
We start at the beginning of that step.
So we get 2 things. I know I've got one too, but go ahead, Doug.
I just want to clarify something that I just noticed by doing some quick calculations. Just on any step you go from the step below it is about a 1.9% increase on each step.
Mhm.
So people need to realize you're looking at it under a 2% increase from one step to the next step.
Mhm.
I don't know if people realize it, but I have to think that up.
Well, that was, yeah, and that's one of the things that he did mention up at the beginning here.
If you want to.
Yeah, no, the people at home may not. Now I've just got one, Chief, and I believe that this is how it would be. If you were in a position, let's just say you were an officer and you had, before, you weren't a corporal, but you've gotten to the point where you're at your pay is actually, let's say you're at a step 14, by chance, you had that many years, now you're a corporal. You wouldn't go backwards in pay, you'd go up at least to get an increase to one of the steps, I'm assuming.
So you go to a
Which would
step,
be similar to the way the federal government works.
so you go to like a step 3.
You go to a step 3 or a step 4 because you're still gonna get some kind of increase, not a decrease for getting a promotion.
You're getting a promotion, so right, so you'd have to get
You
some
would get
type
a
of-
minimal,
Something,
you'd get a minimal promotion
Correct.
salary
Equal or
increase.
more.
You
Right.
wouldn't, right, because otherwise, if you're a 14-year
Why would you
patrol
take a
officer,
step backwards to
you
get
wouldn't
more
take-
duties?
You
Right.
wouldn't take more duties to go backwards in
No.
pay.
But I wanna make sure that one's clear too, so anyone at home, when they do see this,
Yep.
that's how that works.
And-
Yeah.
And
Mr.
it
Brown.
is always, I don't know how your titles go, but it is always possible to be a senior patrolman, that is a senior patrolman, to be earning more than a entry corporal.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. And many times in many departments, that does happen that way, and that's why, in many departments, they don't move up to the supervisor and they don't apply for the supervisory openings because they're making more money. in
They don't
those-
wanna take on
in
the
those
extra
lower
roles and
positions.
responsibilities, right?
So you lose some things and, you lose that ability.
Yep.
So on
But we
salaries,
just talked about that wouldn't happen though.
here it would not happen, correct?
Oh, okay, yeah, all right, okay, yeah,
We
yeah.
are building it so it would not happen.
I see, okay.
What
I
I'm saying is-
misunderstood, sorry.
Yep, no, what I'm saying is that in some agencies, that if you're say a patrolman and you're making, so we'll go back to Humphreys.
I get it. In fact, Larry said it too. I get
Yeah.
it. Yeah, thank you.
So salaries that are above the pay range for where the employee is supposed to come in at on the step plan, those salaries will not get an increase to the next step of the step plan. They would get, sorry, this vest is killing me today. They would get what is, I guess we'll call it a medial increase, which is basically the longevity type changes, until they would catch up to this plan.
Yep.
So we wouldn't continue to give them a 2% increase, because then they would never catch up to the plan, because they'd always stay in front of the plan.
Mhm.
So until they could get caught up to the step that they're on, they would get a medial increase to get closer to bringing them where they're supposed to be. Once they're where they're supposed to be, they drop into the plan and they move forward.
Yep, makes sense.
Do you understand?
I do,
Yeah.
yes,
Yep.
yeah.
Does anybody?
Of course.
Go ahead.
All right, that second part, I mean, I got the first part, but I am an officer, I'm on step 18, I'm making $32.56. I now am promoted to a corporal, which I should go back to step 1, which would only be $29.08.
No,
Not, just let me
Let
finish,
her
please,
finish
thank
the way
you.
she's saying, that's fine.
So, following on what you tried to say, just looking at the next salary that's above the 32.56 is step 7,
Mhm.
32.75. would I go on step 7, or would I still go on step 1 but get a huge amount of money to get me up to?
No, so what you're talking about is different than what I was just talking about. So, you're talking about a promotion,
Well, going from an officer to a corporal, we just talked about it, that you don't
But-
wanna,
but you're talking about a promotion. What we were just talking about here is salaries when we're entering into this plan. So when we're creating the plan and the plan is getting approved, salaries that, of people who are already employed by the town that are above their step. So if we look at mine and we go to me and say, I'm getting paid at step 11. So
Yeah.
say I'm getting paid at step 11, but I'm only at step 9, then I would not get the increases for the next 2 years
okay,
because I'm already above that. So what I would get is I would get a medial step once I got to step 11, then I'm already at step 11. So I would get what is basically the longevity, which isn't an hourly increase, it's a one-time stipend.
which is this, yep,
So it's a pay raise, but it's not in your hourly pay raise.
okay,
So that's what I'm talking about here.
okay,
If they're getting a promotion is completely different than having a salary above the pay range coming into the plan.
okay, then I misinterpreted.
Yeah, and you
what
were
Humphrey was
actually one,
saying.
she's one step back. That was the one we were talking about just before this last.
Oh, well, yeah, I know, I'm
portion.
sorry, I'm just taking
So,
notes
so
here.
to answer your question on that, and I believe it is, if you are getting a promotion, you will get the next step that's above where you're currently being paid.
Right, so if you're at
As
step
that-
18 and you get promoted to corporal, we're not gonna make you lose money to take on more responsibility.
Well, that's, yeah, thank you.
So, because then no one would take that responsibility.
Okay, so but I just move up, I mean, step 7 is 3275.
Right.
Let me try,
So is that all I would get?
let me
is
try
just that?
something, and just to see if this may work, and I'm not sure, Rich, because I know in federal government, because you're at step 18, and I'm trying to answer your question too, Peg. To give them only a 12-cent raise is probably not gonna entice them to do that. In federal government,
Yeah.
you go up, you go to the next step up that you would have gotten, and then find out where the next promotional step would be. So, if you're at step 18, and you're at 3256, the next step you'd be is 3321. If you get the promotion, you would actually go to step 8 in most cases, go to the 3340, so that you get more than just a 12-cent raise.
All right,
That's
no, fine,
generally,
that's
that's
good.
generally how they work, equitable for state and federal, that I've seen.
New York State sends its salute.
Thank you. And Doug, you had something?
My question is, once, say somebody gets to step 20, what happens after step 20? Is he frozen in longevity?
Longevity plan.
So he doesn't get any more 2% increase to
So-
longevity?
So we have built into this plan, so instead of having the plan, so originally the plan was supposed to reevaluate itself. And so every time the cost matrix index changed, the plan would change. We didn't like that. So what we thought was, every 5 years, the same way we created the plan, the group will be put back together with employees and with the town administrator. They'll reevaluate the plan, they'll see if the plan needs to catch up to other communities. If we need to change the numbers, then we'll come back, we'll change the numbers, and we'll bring it back to the residents, and the residents will vote on the change of the plan. So there won't be an
Like the teachers,
automatic change.
just like the teacher's contract gets done.
Correct,
Right.
it'll come back to the residents will make the plan every 5 years and reevaluate it. So if we need to make an evaluation change and change these values in this, it goes to you as the residents, and you make the decision as to whether or not you're gonna change that.
Personally, what I see in that 2% from each step, I think is good.
Right, but what I'm saying is the
Yeah.
grade overall, so say in 5 years, all of these numbers should increase by 2%. Because even the starting pay numbers should increase by 2%, and all of not just you as an employee's pay should increase. The step and grade itself should increase by 2%, because inflation has gone up in 5 years, over 2%. So all the towns around us and all the communities that we compete with have increased their plans by 2%. Then we're going to write this plan again, we're gonna come to the residents, we're gonna write a warrant article, we're gonna put it out to the residents, asking them to increase this by 2%.
You're gonna raise all those figures.
Raise those figures to meet the standards, so we don't end up where we are right now. So right now, We corrected numbers for the police department in 2014. We got us up to midline. Now here we are in 2020, and we're back down towards the bottom again.
I wanna say something, I know you, at this point, you may not be the proper place to say it, but I have the same problem at the school, because
Mm-hmm.
we're at a certain low base for jobs. We have the same problem you do.
And that's what
That's
we're.
across the board with a lot of communities,
Yeah,
because
And
if you
that's why
don't
we're
have an
trying to
ongoing plan.
write the evaluation process into it, and that's why we're putting the evaluation process of when these numbers change into the residents' hands, not into the Board of Selectmen, not into the Budget Committee's hands. So to change the numbers on this page, that would be in the residents and the Budget Committee's hands,
Rebalance
the
on
residents'
these.
hands, not in the, Board of Selectmen or the Budget
I
Committee.
do have one question, and I find it to be interesting, but, on this chart, does the new, for the next year, does the automatic increases go into default, or the voters have to?
So this would be voted on to put the step plan in place
Yeah,
in 2021. It would not be funded until 2022.
2022.
that I understand.
Yeah.
But would this step automatically go into the default, the next rise?
If
No,
it's all
not
approved, no,
till
if it's approved,
2022.
Right,
the,
the following year after
at,
it's
from that
approved.
point forward, it will go forward with the default budget. Once approved and it goes into effect the next year, then it will, when it goes up, the default goes
So I
up
could
with
do the
it.
same thing with the school,
Like you did, it's after it's approved, then you've gotta go back.
so I can do a retention program like this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for
Yep.
your patience.
They have to put up with me, but it's okay.
Somebody have a question?
Right here.
No?
Mike.
So along with putting people, your people into this plan here, over step 20, they don't see no longevity.
They do see a longevity
After step 20,
after step 20.
There's another page, right there, you got it.
right here.
The last, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, but less than 10, they don't.
Correct.
Less
So-
than 10 years of service.
Right.
Okay.
Humphrey?
Yep.
I just have another question for you. It's a legal issue, it's CBAs. And the reason we're able to do that because it's written in the law. Is this gonna be legal with the attorney by the state laws to do it this way?
Yes, that's part of what the negotiation and everything else has been, and why it's now coming forward. This is what the BOS has been working on, and I know Chief Kraus, I don't wanna step on your toes. I know, like I said, we started talking about this back in the summer, again, in trying to move this thing forward. And that was where it went after we started talking about, okay, we'll get the budget going, and then the pay and retention plan was next. They've been negotiating with the lawyer the whole time.
So with this plan, that's why the plan has to be voted on by the residents.
Right.
And the residents are the ones that put the plan in place.
So when you bring this to the voters, I don't know what you make now, but you're gonna show the comparison of what everybody's being paid now and what's gonna be coming down the road in.
That's a question you have to ask the Board of Selectmen. I don't know how they're gonna write the warrant article, but that's a suggestion you can make to the Board of Selectmen on what this plan will look like over a 2-year window for the changes. But I'm not the one that would be writing that warrant article. So
I mean,
don't-
I have the sympathy of the town and the sympathy of the school. We need to do something. We need to do something.
Well, and again, and I'm gonna come back to what I said before you came back in to do the presentation. Right now, in order to not lose employees, we're doing special and I'm gonna call them special deals. They come before and there's nothing illegal about it, but they come before the Board of Selectmen saying, hey, we're gonna lose people if we don't do something. We're in a default year and, yeah, the pay raises we asked for aren't going into effect, but we need something. So then they negotiate a pay raise. But again, it doesn't change the default. And what's happened to us as a budget committee is 2 years in a row, it looks like we're trying to, that they're trying to give a 25 or 30% increase, when the reality is they get a small increase and then another small increase because it was negotiated. And now, as a matter of fact, at one point, it looked like they were getting a big increase and they weren't getting any until we went back to say, everyone's getting 2%, but it's not gonna go into effect until July. So it's only gonna impact the budget by 1%, which we'll see as we go into the budgets afterwards.
So that's the other part of this plan, is that all of these increases go in July 1. So
Correct.
for every year, we're raising half of the money for each year.
Right.
It's how raises have always gone in. I think your Board of Selectmen started that, Mike.
Yep.
Right.
The July 1, that's when raises go into place, because before it was raises when, if you were getting an evaluation or a raise, it came on your evaluation day.
Right.
And your evaluation day was your hire date. So the problem that ran into
It's all over.
was everybody's evaluation date is all over the year.
Mhm.
So the problem you run into, for my department, it's 11 people when we're at full staff. For everybody, it's kind of simple. I can keep track of 11 people. I know when their evaluation dates are. I can get that document down here. Townwide, it's quite a few people, so you're
Mhm.
trying to keep track of everybody's evaluation date and trying to make sure that you make those changes correctly on those times. And if some of them, their evaluation date starts before the budget passes, you can't give them that increase because you have to wait until the budget passes
Right.
to see if you even have the money to give them the increase.
And that's, yeah, cause it's multiplied by the fact that we don't vote till March and January is a start thing. If you don't do something, then that's when July
Correct.
1st becomes a much better starting point.
Yep, so all of these go into place on July 1st like they have for, I think it's the last 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
Which is
so,
a
and
change.
when we get into the budget here, it's gonna look like it's a 1% increase, it's a 2% pay increase,
Yeah.
but it impacts next year by 1%.
correct.
As far as the warrant article, and what Doug just brought up, the warrant article, because it is going to cost the taxpayers money. So I'm assuming that it's gonna have to be, it is going to cost the taxpayers so much. So there's gonna have to be a dollar amount
Not
on
in
the
the
warrant article.
Not in the first year, because the first year is just the adoption of the retention plan.
But I'm not sure, I mean, I'm playing a citizen. I'm not sure I would vote for something like this if I did not know in 2022 exactly what my tax impact is going to be.
And like I just explained to Doug, that's a conversation to have with the Board of Selectmen, on
Right.
how they write their warrant article,
And that's
To
what I'm saying is,
explain.
yeah,
what this will cost in the future.
right. And I think that's gonna be key because as Josephine, citizen, this sounds great, it's great, but what's the impact going to be on me?
So if we were to put this in place next year, I can tell you just from my department, because I know what the numbers would be from my department alone. So if we put this into place next year for my department, for 6 months, it would cost $36,000. To put everybody where they're supposed to be in the plan, in a 1-year drop, $36,000 is what it would cost for my department alone. So obviously, if we spread that out over an extended period of time, especially over a 2-year window for me, because for mine, it's a big jump in steps. So mine would be spread out over a couple of year window. That allows us to spread that out and decrease that cost even more. Some employees are already going to be at the step they're supposed to already come into this for.
Mm.
So there isn't going to be a big increase for those employees, because they're already where they're supposed to be. And I think if we go through most of the town, at this point, with the corrections and wages that have been done over the last couple of years, I think you're gonna find that the increase isn't going to be large, other than probably my agency, because most of the employees at my agency have not seen a raise since 2018. So because we haven't changed in 2018, that's where you're going to see the biggest impact.
Right. 'Cause I know we work things out with the teachers
Mm-hmm.
and come up with an actual cost to Joe and Josephine taxpayer. And some people don't really get a raise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the warrant articles are gonna identify what the cost is
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
per thousand
And
anyways.
that's what I was trying
Yeah.
to say is that
Right,
good old Josephine.
but I
is
will
citizen.
also state, without the pay plan, it can have more of an impact, because then you're starting to shuffle money from one place to another, trying to figure out how to take care of all of this.
So, and that's part of the problem where we are right now. As Humphrey has spoken about, you guys are looking at budgets and you're seeing that wage corrections have been done during default years. Problem with wage corrections during default years, could I have done wage corrections during default years with my department? Yes. The problem I have with that is it sets me 2 years behind. So every time I do that, if we get another default year, I still have to find that money. And I did not get that money put into my budget. So now I have to find that money without any new increase. That means I have to cut other lines short to pull that back, to try and figure that out. So, to me, in my opinion, from my department, I would not do that, and that's why I didn't do that. Even though it's a bottom line budget, I easily could have come into the Board of Selectmen and said, this is what I wanna do for all my employees, that's what I'm going to do, and as long as they said yes, it would have gone through. But again, it doesn't fall into the default because of that
Right.
the way the law is written. But again, like I said, in my opinion, it sets us back 2 years. Because if we have a default and then another default, then we start the cycle rolling again.
Thank
Alright.
you.
Is there a particular point spot here you want me to go to? I brought up, I know we went past page 1 because we'd already talked about.
Yep, I think we already touched on the decompression of salaries.
Yep.
The impact of salary compression. I think everybody understands that not all positions in the town are the same.
Are the same, right.
Right.
Obviously, we can just use the police chief and the fire chief. We have similar positions because we're both town safety, but very different positions at the same time, and very different tasks. That's why we fall in different grades on the
Correct.
step plan. Some positions, people would think they're different. You'll see that the fire chief and the highway director fall in the same grade. They have different tasks and different jobs, but their level of administrative responsibilities are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So they fall in the same grade together.
I want, sorry, go back to page 4 on your longevity, and the way we do it, here we go again with the school, you have to be a resident of the town, of the school or the town, in order to get that longevity, so you have to be in the school system, Milton school system, for 15 years to get that longevity payment. And I don't know if you have thought of that at all yourself.
You have to be an employee or a
Of
resident?
the town of Milton in order to get your longevity.
Right, but you said they have to be a resident.
Yeah, no.
I mean, an employee.
An employee, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, you have that many employees that work at the school that are residents too?
Oh,
No.
well.
I mean, been here that long.
Okay.
I was gonna say, okay, well, thank you for your text though. But,
So is that
Yeah.
gonna go in your plan, or is that gonna be something separate? You're gonna have it just service to the police department then?
it's,
So this isn't just for the police department, this is the entire.
Well, I understand that's why I'm asking
Yeah.
that question.
Um,
longevity pay is years in service as an employee of the town.
Correct.
And it's gonna depend on, because you can still, there'll be different positions within the town, but
I know, but
longevity.
if I go from, I don't know, fireman to a police officer, I've only been a police officer for 1 year, but I was 10 years, 11 years as a fire.
Those you're starting over. My comment
No, I know,
in
but
general would
it-
be, if you get to the end type of thing, longevity, I'm trying to discuss longevity. You get to a 20-year point, you're gonna be at the max step. And no matter where you end up going, you're gonna get some kind of longevity is somehow. That's what's gonna end up. Gonna depend on whether, I mean, you get a promotion, that's gonna change it. Yes, Peg, you're right.
No, yeah, but I'm not looking at it as a promotion, I'm looking at it in a particular position.
Right. So longevity, so you're a patrolman for 20 years here in town. You don't wanna move up to corporal, you don't wanna move up to sergeant, you're just a patrolman for 20 years in town. Once you hit that 20-year mark, your pay isn't going to increase after that. You're
Right.
not gonna get a 2% increase
Right.
on top of that.
Right.
But I
So
get
that's
$1,000.
when you fall into the longevity.
Right,
So you would get $1,000 each year on top, on that point.
okay, but I guess,
So if you're in my position, I guess, so I don't understand why the 10 or 15 years there. I see where you're coming from, Doug. Because you have to hit the end of your scale.
Yeah.
Right.
But the 10 or 15 years is also there because you have part-time employees. So the part-time employees are also eligible for the longevity purposes of this. So I think that's probably why it's a little bit confusing.
Well, you could also hire someone
That's what I was
that
just gonna
has
say.
extra experience that comes in at a step 14 or 15,
yeah,
Mhm.
and then they get to a 10-year mark, they've already hit the end.
Right, and
It's-
that's the other part of it.
it's-
So
That's the years
the
in service piece is
longevity
different.
is, we've hired somebody higher, or they come into the plan higher
In
than
the
what they're
back corner
making, so
there.
that's when they would get the longevity until they get caught up.
Right,
In
Yeah.
the back corner.
yes, Mr. Brown.
What we have is a department head and administration plan, program that has an equitable structure and utility across the board for town employees. It gives a heads up to entering employees, shows light at the end of the tunnel, which is not New Jersey. It gives you as an employee and the town taxpayer an idea of what they can expect in any tax year. What is not necessary to discuss is the unknown of the retirement, of changes in the retirement rate. We do not know the change in the complexion of the town workforce for a number of years coming in and at what step. We don't know the impact of equalization rates set by the state. We don't know the impact of residential sales, and we don't know the impact of reevaluation. So all of those make it all the more important to show how useful this is in any of those situations.
Correct.
And the other thing I just wanted to clarify, Peg, and I know is, just to come back to what I was trying to say is, we can't look at the steps as that's 20 years to get to step 20. If you started from step 1, the most likely scenario, you would take you 20 years to get to step 20. But if you were brought in with experience and started at a higher step, a step 10 or a step 12 or
No,
whatever,
I understand that, but
then
made-
you could actually get you're gonna get to step 20 and you're gonna get longevity because at the 10-year
Right,
mark or
right.
those types of things.
But you made a comment that kind of confused me.
Well, that's why I'm trying to clarify.
Because, well, that's, had nothing to do with the step of what you said. I'm assuming, I mean, everybody in town will follow this longevity plan,
Correct.
but it will be within their particular department. So I have been working for the highway department for 15 years, and then I decide I wanna become a police officer. I start way back,
Correct.
and I'm my first year, so I have to be a police officer for, okay, thank you, that's all I wanted.
Yeah, and
because
when I
what-
said regardless of position, I just meant you could be starting somewhere
Well,
in
I
the
know,
step.
but when you
and-
said that, to me,
Yeah,
that was
okay.
anywhere in the town, so.
No,
Right.
no.
Thank
So-
you.
And that's what I was trying to explain at the beginning. So, I've worked for the town for 20 years in January. January will be my 20th year. If this plan went in place, I don't start at chief 20 because I haven't been a chief for 20
Okay.
years. I've only been a chief for 9 years.
Alright,
But you'll get
Yeah, I got
longevity of
that.
20 years.
If I made it to 20 years, if
As
I
chief,
stay
then
around
you
as
would get
chief
it.
for 20 years,
It's
Then
not
I-
just as a police officer.
no.
Yeah.
You get your longevity when you max that position that you're in out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And-
is that your plan, Richard?
20 years as chief?
Yeah.
well, you got a
Maybe.
couple more years to go.
Yeah.
Like I said, I hit my 20 January 3rd, so thankfully I'm not 45 yet, but.
Thank
So-
you,
okay.
that explains,
At the bottom of page 4, Peg, there's an example of how
right, the
it would be,
part-time.
how the part-time
Yeah.
longevity would be broken down.
Yeah, I saw that, I read that, that made sense.
So that explains it a little bit on how the part-time longevity would be broken down
Yep.
for part-time
Right.
employees.
All right. You wanna go to the plan, some of the plans, or you
Yeah, we can go to some of the plans if you'd like.
just, because I know that you've got the different, you already went and looked at the police one, but I think the one that changes the most is going to be the fact that we've got admin, recreation, and library, because we haven't had anything in there. So right up front, town administrator would fall into the same type of grade as the police chief position.
Correct. Yep. And then you have administrative assistant,
Yep.
to the TA, which is a part-time position, which falls at grade 14.
Mm-hmm.
Assessing director, which is a full-time position, is 19. Town clerk tax collector, full-time elected, is 19. They have very similar tasks.
Yep.
Deputy town clerk tax collector is a 15. Town clerk tax collector part-time is a 13. So the deputy obviously has more tasks than the town clerk tax collector employee.
Which obviously makes sense, yeah.
Yep. And then the welfare administrator, part-time or contracted, that, as you can see, doesn't have, pay
Well, we
rates
don't
in
have
it.
anything at this point, right?
Chris, right, and they're listing that as to be determined as well.
Yep.
But that would be a grade 12.
Mhm.
When you move to assessing and planning, land use clerk would be a 14, code enforcement officer or building inspector would be a 17. Recreation director would be a 19, which is similar tasks to the town clerk tax collector and the assessing director.
Mhm.
The assistant rec director would be a 15. And then the seasonal positions, camp counselor would be a step 1, or excuse me, it would be a grade 1. Lifeguard counselor would be a grade 2, beach or gatekeeper would be a grade 2, maintenance director full-time would be a 12, and camp director would be a 15.
I think, in all honesty, and Claudine, this is for you, when we go, it would be less confusing if where it shows column A, those said grade,
Correct, yeah.
because it says step, and that comes back to Peg's comment at the beginning, when this gets, Put together.
I think it just says step because there's a line.
there's a
under
line for step
just
across, but it does show step 1, 2, 3. The word
Correct.
step's in there every time, you're better
Yeah.
off saying grade, so
Right,
people aren't
right.
going, step 1 is step 1,
For
you know.
clarification.
Right.
I'll ask the town administrator to.
Yeah,
to
just change that to
first
say
line
grade.
and
It would make it
easier
easier,
for
I think, in the
everyone,
long run.
Because on the big one, it does say grade, so
Yeah,
on just the individual for each
it
department.
shows step on the
It
line.
says step, yep.
Right. Doug, you had a comment?
Kristen, what would I have to do so I could get everybody's current hourly salary right now?
If you look at my department, you already have it.
Yeah, and actually, that was actually just put out too, publicly out on Facebook,
If you
from what
look
I
at my,
understand.
If you look at my budget,
Oh, okay.
What
if you look at my budget, you already have my budget handout.
No,
that
the
I
budget
already-
handout he
That
had.
one, yeah.
If you look at
okay.
my budget handout that I already gave you, you already have all of my, what they currently
Yeah.
make and what I'm asking for them to move to.
Right. It is public, it's public information.
Yep.
So,
And I think if you look at, Public Works, I think he has it written in his
he
handout.
had it in one of them, I don't know if he had it this
Okay.
year, he's
And I
had it
think
in
if
the
you look
past.
at the fire departments, I think he has it in there.
It was in the town report in the past too, but I didn't see it this past year.
Yeah, I don't know if it went in the town report this
No.
year, but I know it's in my handout for my department. I know if you look in, the fire department's, his is in there. I
Mhm.
thought highways was in there.
Yeah.
I don't remember, if the town administration.
We didn't have it in the administration piece, but
Okay.
right now, that went out, Doug, I'll see what I can do about getting the file.
Okay.
But the file was confusing because it showed everybody's raises for a number of years as opposed to where everyone was this year.
Sort of where everybody is right now.
Right.
yeah.
So Richard, in your step program here on the administrative, you have administrative assistant, and you have a wage for it and a step program. However, in the draft budget proposal here and the one that Humphrey had built, there's both, full-time, part-time. Full-time is a zero amount.
Correct.
The part-time is just $1 to keep the line open.
Mhm.
So is that what you're referring to when is there going to be an administrative assistant
Well, here's the
at
thing,
some
well,
point?
we actually
I
have an
thought
administrative assistant right now, that is what Julius Peel was actually hired as part of that. But I think to not confuse this,
So
the
this
line
is-
items right now do not line up with what's here in this pay plan.
Right,
Correct. These
They
are just
will,
listing the
they
position.
will, if this gets approved, be adjusted accordingly.
So these are just listing the positions
Right.
that
Not
are
necessarily
currently
what's-
in town. So these are positions that the town currently has and that we would have to have a step and grade for.
but how
Because-
come that isn't on the proposals? If it's currently in the town now, it should be under, either part-time or full-time.
They are, but there isn't, but the administrative assistant doesn't fall under the town administrator. The administrative assistants, right now, actually falls under the land use
Right,
area.
Right,
but that was already a full-time position,
Correct.
right?
Right.
it was,
So, yeah,
No,
you
the land
decreased-
use, there was, they combined it
it
to
was
make it.
part-time with another
Yeah.
position. So
Right.
the administrative assistant to the TA was part-time, and then another
No,
position was
There's two
part-time
part-time
and they did-
things to make it a full-time position right now.
So, on land use,
On the, yeah, on the budget proposal you're talking about, there's a full-time and a part-time position on ours. We'll have to do that when we pull the budget up.
okay, go on, I'll find it.
I think what you're gonna, yeah, because like I said, what you're gonna find is there's an admin assistant part-time, and then there's the land use
Right here.
part-time, and then on our, right. The position
But
falls under
still,
land use, it's
Under
not,
this step program, it has them both at full-time.
yes, it's full-time because they combined the positions into the one full-time position. They combined two part-time positions to make one full-time position under land use.
Oh, so that really should be explained, because they're both at start at what, the 7:58?
Right now
It
is,
was always full-time.
yes, but I'm saying, he combined it when he advertised, is what I'm talking about, Danielle. He's giving them extra duties
Right.
under that, right.
Right, but
The land use clerk was full-time, but he's changed the duties on that particular thing.
added duties, I guess.
So
Yeah.
they probably ought to
so
explain that when they
full
write the warrant,
administrative assistant line,
too, because it shows, I mean, it
it's
looks like-
irrelevant because he's combining them together.
Right. Well, okay, we can't take apples and oranges and compare them right now. What we're putting together for a budget proposal does not line up with what this pay plan has.
Correct,
The
so.
budget next year, if this gets approved, when we go and figure out the 2022 budget, will line up with what this pay plan, if this is approved, will line up with the pay plan itself.
Correct,
But
so,
for next year, it can't because they haven't made these changes.
so these sheets that show each department are just to show the positions in the department.
And thanks,
where
Danielle.
those positions would fall into the grades. They're not saying that that position is currently full in a department, or that position is, that's how position is being used in that department, that it's a standalone position. That's not what this is saying. This is just saying that these are positions that are in those departments. So those are positions we would have to put in this big scale, find a grade for, and put them on a step.
I hate to keep doing it, but you should still be able, even though you may not have the approval yet until it votes, you should be able to ask Peg's questions, you should be able to forecast these increases, cause if this passes, you already have your figures
Yeah.
on the charts.
Which we can.
Yes.
And like I said, I've already done it for, I've
Yeah.
already done that for
You
my
said you're
department.
36,000?
Right, I've already done that for my department.
Right.
We should-
So, it's a simple request to each of the other departments to
Mhm.
say, look at the scale,
Right.
look at your employees, where would they fall in the scale?
Yeah.
And it may just be a simple request to the town administrator,
Mm-hmm.
to say, look at all of the departments, find what people make currently, find where they would go in the scale, and find out what the cost would be.
And in all honesty, coming back to that was my comment from the beginning, Doug, is it's gonna be a heck of a lot easier to forecast where we're gonna be if you've got a pay and retention plan than it is right now where, okay, what are we gonna pay somebody? Let's see what we can figure out.
Correct.
Okay, and that's what's been happening for a few years now.
Yes.
And that's why I also mentioned at a meeting back in August that if we continue and we don't get this next one approved, which is why we're coming in under the default, we will never catch up if we went to another default budget.
Unless this warrant article passes, that would change.
Well, if the warrant, if we come in under the default, the odds are people aren't gonna say, let's give them the default budget, cause it's more money, so you're gonna get the budget to pass. Is the idea. Alright, is there anything else anybody wants to look at here, or Chief, is there anything you want to touch on specifically?
Nope, we touched on all of those positions.
Okay,
So do you wanna go to Public Works?
yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Let me just make it so we can see it.
Yeah.
And there we go.
I just got one comment, this is not directed at you, but I have to tell you, I really got scared, cause I read your information that you sent me, when I saw that 6266, I did the calculations for 40 hours and 52 weeks, and that came up with $128,000. I'm not here to scare anybody, but whose position is that one?
So there is no position.
Yeah, we don't, you're talking about the grade 30 and at the step 20?
Yeah.
Yeah,
number-
there is no in there, and there's also no one at step 20 in any, in any of our highest positions, so.
But even if you're looking at my position,
Yeah,
and you look at step grade 29, and you push me out to 20 years, it's $59.25. So that's $124,000 a year. For me to get to that point, I would have worked for the town, so I'm at step 9 now, add another 11 years. So that would mean I've worked for you for 31 years. And so, I've now worked for you for 31 years. If you give me a 2% raise for 31 years,
It's
I'm
gonna
probably
get there.
getting pretty close to that point anyway.
Right,
You're worth it.
and he would not be going home at night, that would be crazy.
I already don't go home at night, so.
Yeah, but I'm saying for another reason though, until you're gonna add another reason.
Alright.
Okay, so Public Works.
So Public Works, the Public Works Director, full-time elected, falls into grade 25.
Mhm.
Solid Waste Attendant would fall at grade 9. Building and Grounds Assistant would fall at grade 9. Public Works Secretary would fall at grade 14. Solid Waste Truck Driver, which is listed as presently combined with a solid waste supervisory position, would be a 14. Grounds and Buildings Supervisor would be 16. The lead mechanic, which is a full-time position, would be 18. Solid waste supervisor combined with solid waste truck driver would be a 15, and then the general foreman at the highway department would be an 18.
Okay. Another one we didn't show was fire, which we'll bring up.
So the fire department, obviously, because they have many different positions and many different responsibilities built into the fire department, they also have many different certifications to get into those positions.
Correct.
Fire chief would be grade 25. Assistant fire chief with EMR would be a grade 21. An EMT would be a grade 22. EMT advanced would be a grade 23. And an EMT paramedic would be a grade 24. So if they receive the promotion of assistant chief and they have EMT paramedic licensing, that would push them to a grade
Right.
24. So that's how they would get to that extra position. But that's gonna be written into the job description. So the only way for them to get to that point is to have it is to meet that standard of the job description. So every single position in this plan has to have a job description. And it has to have something written into it that shows how you get to that position.
There's also another thing that I'll bring up, because if they don't maintain that position, if they don't maintain that qualification,
Correct.
there's also places where it drops back.
Yep.
Which we don't currently really have a well-defined plan across the board for those types of things.
Correct.
We will with this type of plan in place.
Deputy chief would be a grade 19 for EMR, grade 20 for EMT, grade 21 for EMT advanced, and grade 22 for EMT paramedic. A fire captain or EMS coordinator, grade 17 for EMR, 18 for EMT, 19 for EMT advanced, and 20 for EMT paramedic. Lieutenant for the fire department would be 16 for EMR, 17 for EMT, 18 for EMT advanced, 19 for EMT paramedic. And then an engineer or senior firefighter with no EMS would be 13, with EMR would be grade 14, and EMT would be grade 15, EMT advanced would be grade 16, and EMT paramedic would be grade 17. Administrative assistant to the fire department would be grade 14. Firefighter with no EMS would be grade 11, with EMR would be grade 12, EMT would be grade 13, EMT advanced 14, EMT paramedic would be 15, and then a firefighter who is uncertified would be grade level 10 with no EMS, 11 EMR, grade 12 EMT, grade 13 EMT advanced, and grade 14 EMT paramedic.
Another question on this chart. Okay,
Which,
this one you just read me.
the fire
Fire.
department, okay?
It could be everybody's. Would the part-time person get these same rates? Work less than, what do you
As
have?
far as the on-call part-time personnel,
Yeah, what do you like, say if he's a firefighter and he's no EMS,
they get, I don't believe, I don't know if that's the case or not. We'd have to
I
ask
don't have-
Chief,
I
we'd
don't
have
know
to
how to
ask
answer that
Chief
question.
Marie.
You have to ask Chief Marie that
Yeah.
question.
I don't
Not-
know.
Isn't just him, I'm asking that, you wanna get a part-time fire,
Well, on the other ones, yeah, we know that part-time personnel will fall under these step plans in here, yes.
So,
But
right,
I
so
don't
if
know
you look
about
at
the fire.
part-time police, yes, they fall into the grade and the
Yes.
step. So if a part-time firefighter falls into firefighter,
Danielle,
then I would think they would meet that standard.
you still there?
Yeah.
Is the chief available to answer that question?
Yeah, you would just wanna have to repeat it in one sec.
I will do that if you could get him, and then we'll get your answer. I just figured that's an opportunity we don't always have, but I'd like it to be able to be answered right now rather than wait.
Please have him put shoes on.
Okay, ready,
Yeah.
go.
Oh boy, put me on the spot.
Chief Marik, an official question. We're looking at the pay plan, the pay and retention plans. So the question
Yeah.
came down, because I know you've got firefighter, uncertified, and firefighters. Do your part-time on-call personnel type of things do they fall into these same step plans? If they are a firefighter with no EMS, do they fall under the grade 11, and then particularly whatever step they may have based on time as a part-timer, or are you paying them on an on-call basis separately?
Every member of the fire department, whether they're an on-call volunteer person, a part-time person working shifts, or a full-time employee, fits onto that scale.
Okay, it
So
says,
when the-
hold on one second, Nick, so Dougie says every employee, regardless of what position it is, part-time, full-time, and all that, fall onto this
Same
plan,
hourly.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
The same hourly rates.
Yep.
Thanks, Nick.
So you had something else on that, Nick?
The difference being that the call and volunteer firefighters are only paid hourly when they're working.
Only when they're working, yeah, I understand.
Called in, and then the part-time people are there for the shift, and the full-time people obviously.
Right, they're getting paid for the whole
are
shift
there for
itself.
the-
Okay. By the way, welcome back from your vacation.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for the response.
Yep. Anything else?
No, that's it, I appreciate that, Nick, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. If you need anything, let me know.
All right, thanks. All right, Chief, anything, was anybody got any additional questions or
No, thank you
Comments?
for all your explanation.
anything extra on this?
So I guess I would ask that if you have comments that, because obviously this board and the budget committee, the Board of Selectmen are the boards that, when it comes to money,
Mm-hmm,
are the boards that a lot of people are gonna come talk to.
right,
You're going to have conversations with more residents, about this than some of the department heads may. I obviously have the benefit of having very close contact with a large number of residents.
mm-hmm,
They'll ask me questions about this, I can answer this. So, my request to this board is, if you have questions for me, or for the TA, or the Board of Selectmen, or individual department heads, on what this would cost to put their people in those positions, so that way you can either support this, or if you feel that something needs to change in this, please let us know so we can make this
Absolutely.
change before we start pushing this out to the residents. I know the Board of Selectmen have supported the plan and feel that it's a plan it's going to help us. It's a roadmap to get us where we need to be. And in my opinion, it puts the ball back into the court of the residents every 5 years to change these, to reevaluate whether or not we're still meeting market value of our employees.
mm-hmm.
All three selectmen?
All three selectmen.
What if in 5 years, another plan goes to the voters and they vote it down? Would it just default
It
back
would
to
default
this?
It would
back.
default
Okay,
to
that's
this
what-
current
okay.
plan.
Yeah. If the
Same as the
residents-
school does with with contracts for the teachers.
Right, if the residents decided that
Good question.
they don't wanna change the
Yes.
market value on this in 5 years, it stays as
It
this
stays
plan.
the same, it
Right.
doesn't just disappear, I guess is my,
Correct, no,
Right.
it just stays as this plan, and it doesn't increase that percentage with market value.
All the more reason to have a beneficial plan put in place in the first place, and then go from there, because the residents do have control.
That'll, actually, if, down the road, if they do decide to look at this again, it'll be in the warrant article.
Right.
It'll say that it will fall, if it goes to default, it'll go back to the first plan.
Correct.
The only, I like this plan.
Yep.
I think it's great, it's needed. The only thing I'm still hinged on, and I'm gonna, you say your lawyers said we can do this. Okay, all right. If you can do it, I'm gonna talk to our lawyer and see if we can do it for the school.
Yeah.
Okay, and if we can do it, I'm gonna,
My comment, Doug, was, I know they've been working with the lawyers. I'm not gonna answer for a lawyer,
I'm not.
you know? I'm not gonna answer for the
You
state or
were
anything
up there
else, I
with a
just know
lawyer.
they've been working with a lawyer. And I know our lawyer's been very much involved in this whole thing. Where it goes from there, I can't answer that question, you know?
So, and that's the biggest thing, is a step plan has to be adopted by, a step plan that's adopted by the Board of Selectmen is advisory, and we can increase it, but it's not something that falls into a default budget.
Right.
A step plan that is adopted by the residents then is something that's not advisory anymore, because it's the residents who have supported it and pushed it through.
Right.
So it's almost the same as a contract with the employees and putting it into town policy.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And again, it takes the guesswork out of what salaries and all that are going to be or may be. It puts it right there in front of the voters so they understand what it will be,
Correct.
so. All right, anything else?
Thank you, sir.
Chief, thank you very much for your time, really appreciate that. And if we have anything, I'll definitely get back to you on that too, so.
And Mike, just to touch back on it, all three of the Board of Selectmen support pushing this forward to
Yes.
your committee. So if they had a problem with it, they wouldn't have, in my opinion, supported pushing it to here.
Exactly,
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's, it
but
was,
all three of them supported in their motion to push it here, so.
Yep.
it's important, yeah.
Like I said, if this board has any changes or any issues with it that they'd like to see us reevaluate and look at, please get back to us kind of
it
quickly.
needs to be
so-
done now, because we, yeah, if we
So we
do have
can-
anything, right.
Try to move it forward and we can try to do those evaluations. But those are some of the things we pulled out. Instead of it changing automatically with market value, we pulled that out and we put it into the hands of the residents. And so the other part of this is the way this is written, I think it is written strict enough that you won't have the problems that we're currently in
Mm-hmm,
with people and departments coming to the Board of Selectmen and saying, well, we're so below market value that you haven't given us a wage correction in 6 years. You need to correct our wages. Well, they can't anymore.
Right.
Because they have to meet the step that they're at.
correct.
So you can't come in and say, I worked for the town for 3 years, but I feel I should be at step 7, and I wanna be at step 7. Well, there's no negotiation for step 7, because you don't have the qualifications to meet step 7.
Right.
So, with this, I think that locks that in place and makes it so those types of things aren't going to be able to happen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So the evaluations that are given are going to be changed as well, to have all the criterias, so it'd have criterias to meet, to
So-
get to these steps?
Right, so the
Yeah.
criteria is if you're a 3-year employee, you can't be asking for step 7.
Right,
Because you haven't worked for the town for 7 years and you haven't got 7 years of appropriate evaluations.
and or it's certain certifications and or
Depending
Right,
training.
so if you
or-
need
yeah.
certifications to get a promotion to
Yeah.
jump up to that different level. So for the fire department, if you're going from firefighter no EMS and you went to firefighter paramedic, to get to that jump, you would have to have that certification. So you meet all those certifications, you get to get that jump at your next evaluation for raise.
My
So-
only, by the way, on this one, just hold on a second, my only, before I forget, is that on each of these, my big thing is like we get some line items that haven't been finished, that'll need to be adjusted, as well as the grade comment on the left-hand side. As far as the other changes, I didn't see any myself, but go ahead, Mike.
So the ad you have going on,
Mhm.
where would that, cause if someone, he or she, came in and met all of the criteria that you have in that ad,
Yeah.
that would put them quite a ways up into the STEP program,
So
right?
it wouldn't, because we don't currently have this step plan. So right now, if I was to hire that person,
No, if this was
if
it,
this is in place, okay,
Yes.
so if this is in place and somebody comes in and says, and can prove to me that they have 10 years experience. So they come in the door, they can show and prove to us they have 10 years of law enforcement experience, they're New Hampshire certified, they have all of the steps and have passed all of the classes they're supposed to take over those years. Yeah, we could put them at step 10.
Right.
So that we can bring that 10-year officer from another agency and bring all of that experience here into the town of Milton. So
Right.
that we're not just, and I hate to use this phrase, but we don't go back to 2001 when we were just a training ground. When we trained everybody and then everybody left.
Yep.
All the way up to 2014, we were a training ground. We brought everybody in here, we trained them, other people paid them more and they left.
I remember that distinctly.
That's where we don't wanna get back to, and unfortunately, with the predicament, and I hate to keep using my department as an example, but it's the easiest one to use, seeing I'm standing in front of you. We're in the predicament of the police academy. So, if I was to hire an uncertified officer right now to try to fill that one position that the selectmen are letting me hire, then I'm not getting that officer into the January academy. So even if I hire that officer who's now then uncertified, I'll be lucky if I get him into the April academy with the speed that the academies are filling. So then we have an employee that we really can't use other than just being an extra body that we're training, sitting in the passenger seat. And with some of the changes that are coming as of January 1, I don't know that as the chief of police, I'm going to take that liability on myself and on the town to have that uncertified person sitting in the passenger seat any longer. Whereas before, it was, we did 5 to 10 weeks of their FTO before they ever went to the academy. Because it's a huge benefit to the officer to have that time in the car and on the road and learning those things before they ever go to the academy. And when they come back, they get whatever balance of the FTO is left, and they're ready to be street able and out working for us. Now, I'm just not really, this close to the end of my career, I'm not willing to take that liability on myself any longer. And with the rule changes that are coming, I'm just not willing to do that anymore. So, again, it puts us at another burden. So, we push off hiring, and then we push off hiring again. So we're trying to hire somebody to get into the April academy, but by then, the people that we think we can hire now, they're already hired by somebody else. And so we can't have somebody sitting on the hook, waiting to get hired to go to an April academy when we're doing a test now in November or December. So that's why the ad that we have out right now is for certified people only right now, because
You
we
gotta start,
need
you
that
need a
help
place to
now.
start, right?
We need the help now.
Right.
So we can't look for an uncertified person right now, because I can't even get him into the academy with the expectation of finishing all the paperwork and all the background and everything else to be able to even get them into the January academy before it fills up. I know I looked at the numbers the other day and I think they're at 57. They only take 67. And so there's less than a month left before the deadline of the paperwork. Even if we wanted to try and hire somebody, the likelihood of an uncertified person of us getting the paperwork done in time is slim.
Yeah.
So right now, that's part of our problem, is we're trying to entice a certified person to come work for Milton, and the highest step on our scale for a certified person is $25 an hour. A lot of departments, that's their starting rate for a new or uncertified officer. So we're trying to compete with where you can go, or you're already at a department, you're taking a pay cut to come work for us. So to entice them to come here, we need something different. And then to entice our officers that we currently have that are certified, we need something to entice them, so that agency that says, hey, look, you don't even have to negotiate with us. We pay $24.50 an hour just to walk through the door. You've got 3 years experience with Milton, and you're only making $22.50, you can walk through the door over here and get a $2.50 raise just to walk through the door. That's what we need to find a way to, and I know most of the stuff we're talking about is money, but we all know that that's what keeps, people stay because they're happy, but they also stay because they can pay their bills without working hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of hours of overtime and everything, and extra details and those type of things. What the town is gonna run into, you only have 2 of us that are under, well, you only have 1 employee for the police department that's under the original old retirement plan. Then you have 1 employee who's in the, we'll call it the limbo zone of the retirement plan. After that, all of the employees that came in after that, things like their details and those types of things don't count towards their retirement. And those employees have to work till they're age 50. So they have a lot longer they have to work, and they get less out of the retirement when they're doing that. So it's their overtime and their base pay that goes into their retirement. So if you're getting paid here and you're getting $22 an hour here in Milton, but another agency offers you 26, you're going to the 26. No matter how happy you are in Milton, you're going to the 26 because that's improving your retirement at the end of your career.
Plus the current, plus
Plus,
your current.
right, plus your current
Plus your
paycheck, but
quality
at
of
the
life
end
right
of
then
your,
and there.
Yeah,
right, at
all
the
of
end
it.
of your
It
career,
all rolls up.
that's improving it.
Yep.
So that's what towns are going to have to start seeing, is that those changes are going to impact you. And they're going to impact you rapidly because, like I said, we're coming to the end of the line with officers that are in the old plan. That everything that we do and get paid for goes into our retirement. And so once those officers aren't there any longer, then you run into the other problems. And so you're going to have to try and figure out how to keep those officers because of the way you're paying them. You're going to have to figure out how to keep them and how to make sure that their hourly rate is competitive with everyone. And that's part of the other problem is people look at it and say, well, are we competitive with, say, Farmington? Are we competitive with, say, Middleton, excuse me? Well, we're not losing our officers to the Farmington type agencies and the Middleton type agencies. So that's really not our competitor. Our competitors are the larger agencies that are saying, okay, well, they got trained over here. They had to do everything. So they know how to do all of these skills. Let's grab that officer, bring him over here, and that's who we're competing with. And I know when people want to look at it and say, well, you make more than Farmington makes, or you make the same as what this department makes. Well, you have to look at who we're losing our officers to. And that's what we did in 2014. We showed really who we're losing our cops to, and it wasn't small towns that we were losing our police department, our police officers to.
And it makes it rough for us for a small town with a smaller population, where they have a larger population that can support a just police department.
Correct. They have a larger population. They have businesses. They have the ability to do a lot of those things. So for the smaller towns, we have those issues that we have to try and figure out, and we have to try and make different ways to try and come up with those things. And I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to do that, but we're at such a wall point now that we're at our breaking point with having all of these plans and different plans that it's just making a mess of everything. And that's what you guys, I think, are seeing in the budget process. You're seeing that mess finally come and spill over the top.
Yep.
So I think this type of plan will stop that from happening because there are rules in place on how you can be put into those other spots. And you can't jump to those other spots unless you've met those standards.
Yep, absolutely. And again, it makes it a lot more efficient for everything. The whole overall process is gonna be a lot easier to deal with, and people are gonna know where they stand, so.
Right.
And I'm gonna say both the employees and the voters.
Yeah.
Know where we stand.
And I mean, as the budget committee, you could look at, say, we'll look at an elected position. So you could look at the highway department's highway director, the elected position. You're gonna know what his his costs are gonna be the entire period of his election.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a 3-year window, you're gonna know
You know
what
what
those
those
costs
3
are for
steps are
the
gonna be.
entire budget, for those 3 steps of the entire process.
Yep.
So you'll be able to do that on many positions. Obviously, some that have the probability of changing, you may not be able to have an exact number, but you can be close.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be able to see what that's going to look like salary-wise over a 3 or 4 or 5-year window. But I think that will not only level out things, but it'll make it a little easier for budgeting process and budgeting time,
Mm-hmm.
and then also explaining it to the residents in the long run,
Oh, absolutely.
why things are either increasing or decreasing, and
I'd much rather sit here and have to explain that this is what it's going to be over 3 years than go, we don't know where we're at today, you know, so we're, that's why it's showing this 25 or 30% increase, but that's not reality, so. Right. All right. Anything else?
No, sir, thank you.
All right, guys. We can take a couple moment break here if anybody needs it, and then we'll get into the budget piece. If nobody needs it, I'll roll right into it. It's up to you guys. Again, Rich, thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Rich.
Save that. All right. I take it where we're not doing it, we'll roll right into, what we have for a budget plan. I gave you guys copies, everybody's, Claudine, did you get a copy of what I had? Did I give you that? Okay.
Which one are we supposed to be looking at?
We are looking at hours right now.
Okay.
Hours. I looked at what, Ernie has given us, what Claudine's passed out. There's a couple little minor variations, and I understand, I don't even know if Ernie got a couple of them. There were a couple calculation issues I found that we were working through. No, I'm saying, I don't know if he made a couple of the changes I found after that. I'll be talking with him tomorrow, but what I want to address with everybody right now, which I started to talk about at the beginning, is I did meet with him yesterday. We want to be able to get this information out to the voters, so Claudine, this comes back to the comment, you know. We're obviously not gonna have a pamphlet or a handout because of where we're at, but what we can do, and we'll have to figure it out, is I am going to get the rights to post this directly, and when I'm saying I'm gonna get the rights, me personally, I'm gonna be meeting with Ernie either tomorrow or Thursday to post what we have for a current plan, so the voters will be able to see it. So if we're talking to anyone coming out of the poll, you know, because we're not gonna do it within the polling place, obviously, but if we do decide that that's how we're gonna do it, or we talk about going to the transfer station or wherever else we're gonna do this, the residents are gonna understand tonight, this is gonna get posted by the week's end, where we are currently on our plan. This plan's not finalized until the end of the year because of insurance and benefits and those types of things. But what we need to do tonight is come up with our numbers based on what we've talked about. Now, yesterday when I met with Ernie, we talked about the possibility of the stipend piece, and he's got a note on his. I'm gonna turn, if you guys do turn to what Claudine passed, you'll notice there's a note about the budget, about the Board of Selectmen, okay? When they decided to go and give the 2% increase across the board, stipends get increased as well. When I addressed it, and I'll be open and honest with this, I said to him, I don't know why we changed the stipends. The stipends aren't necessarily tied, they're not tied to an employee. I'm not saying people aren't in those positions, but stipends aren't a town employee. And we did talk a little bit about that at our meeting. It makes sense to give the 2% increase to the employees. Those salaries, those are salary increases, and it'll only be a 1% change because it doesn't go into effect until July 1st. But I started by looking at and saying, do we really want to change, you know, what's the message we're sending if we say we're changing, and I'm not picking on the Board of Selectmen, that was just, you guys did it across the board, but changing the Board of Selectmen stipend by $23 each. That's what it would amount to. Does that even make sense? To me, when I talked to him and I said that, and again, I can't vote for the budget committee alone, I said I didn't think so. You know, I don't believe it did. And that's why that note's here. Is it going to change? Now, I don't know when you guys, if you get, because I know you didn't get to it yesterday. The only thing you got to was the outside appropriation
Right.
piece.
We're gonna be meeting tomorrow.
Okay, so what I'd like to do in the interest of this is, I did not increase it on ours. That's what what you're gonna see for the difference. If you look at the total here, and I'm gonna bring this back up for the public to see. They're not gonna see me pointing at the screen with my fingers, but right here where it's showing, we currently show $4,420,295 under the budget committee proposal. Okay? And under column U here is the adjustments that have been made, minus a couple things that Ernie made for changes yesterday, which we'll address. Showing $4,420,371. So there's 76, and it actually ends up being somewhere around $75 difference, because there's pennies and things like that that float. The biggest piece of that is matter of fact, the only piece of that is all right here with the stipend, because I increased the stipends on ours to match on everything else. It's, if you take out the $69 to the selectmen and just keep their stipend the same, then Social Security and Medicare drop, and it becomes the 70 some odd dollar difference. That's the only difference between what I have, other than a couple calculation things that I'm gonna go through. And this is all based on everything we went through the last time, so I mean, I wanna be able to go through and just show where we're at, and make sure that we're all in agreement.
Okay, can I just say something?
Yes, please.
Okay, so, as far as the 2% on the elected positions, it was just to show fairness across the board. It wasn't, nobody was looking.
Oh, no,
just
no, I
reflected.
understand that.
It was
I'm not
for all
picking on anybody.
elected in employees,
Yep.
because there was so many turnarounds and people's, suggestions and how things were being pulled on the budget that was presented previous. So
Mhm.
we just thought, in all fairness, that's what we were gonna do.
Yep.
But obviously, if that's an issue, we're gonna discuss that tomorrow.
And again, just so I'm clear, it's not, and it's not about elected positions, okay? Because the fire chief is elected, the public works director is elected, the town clerk, tax collector is elected. I wasn't talking elected positions.
Well, that's.
I'm
we
only
were-
talking
when
to
we
different.
were making that decision,
I understand.
that's what it was. It was just
Nope.
elected positions, so when we were going through and that came up, and
Yep.
it was just in fairness across the board, that's all it was.
Yep. And I just wanted to
So-
be clear too, for me, I just
Yep.
said the difference between salaries and stipends. That was the only difference. And I said stipends normally is just, this is an amount. If you want the position, this is a stipend, it's not a regular salary in that regard. As a matter of fact, under one of them, it's paid in a way that it doesn't even involve Social Security and Medicare. So, but I just wanted to explain, that's why there was a difference in our numbers too, okay? So, I was tasked with making the changes, I've made the changes, and I'm gonna go through, because I've got them highlighted, is the only difference is right there, right now, in one other math area, okay?
I just have an absolute general question here.
Yes.
Good old Josephine. Legal services, I'm looking in the second column over, and I've been trying to figure out what all of the
Oh, this one here?
columns are.
Yep,
But it says updated 2021 default budget,
correct.
and then the next one proposed on 10/8, the next one is 10/16, so I'm assuming that was the latest at that point.
Mm-hmm.
How can, I'm looking at legal services, 4130,320.
Yep.
Default is 34,880.
Yep.
But then the proposed is only 33,500.
Correct, which kind of falls in line with where we were under the 2020 default budget. That was a question that I had asked at that meeting.
But you
And
didn't
it-
hear my question. How can we have a default that is higher than the proposed if a default is supposed to be contractual, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question is the 34, whatever it is, 880,
880 accurate.
is that a contract for legal services? I mean, just kind of looking at this going, it should not be in the default if it's not a contract.
Mhm.
And why would the proposed budget be less? And there are several going down through there that,
Right, and to come back, that's why I was trying to answer, because that was the question I asked at the joint meeting, and and per our town administrator, yes, it falls in because of how things rolled up into the legal services, but they are going to, and I don't understand how it comes in under either. I'm just telling
Thank
you, yes, I don't understand, because I don't know why it would not still be 33,500. But per our town administrator, it did roll up in the default, but they were not going to ask for the full amount based on what was rolling into the contract. That's what he had answered at that meeting.
yeah, no, I remember that, and I still have the question, because we've got telephone, we've got supplies,
The services, I can go back.
purchase.
No, I can go back. They had a few things that he rolled into it. I don't remember all the answers, but I do know that that was asked and answered then, that he says, yes, the 34,880 was the actual increase due to the contract, but they were not gonna go after that full amount to try to cut the cost. He addressed that specifically, so,
I just question the legality of it, that's all.
I don't disagree with you, Peg. I don't
Okay.
disagree with you. I don't have a specific answer though. Yes?
So, but what, if I'm correct on what you just said, the town administrator said the contract increase is the 34,880,
Yes,
but the Board of Selectmen is not asking for the 34,880.
correct. They're coming in under. That was an agreement
So
that they came.
that's why the
Based on
contract
what
would
rolled
still
into
show
the
in
contract.
Right, but my question is legally, what goes into the default
Is
needs
the
to be
contract.
a contract, correct?
Mhm.
Right.
So why are we not,
Because we're
I-
finding the money in other lines,
And
so
I
that
think
we
I
don't
can
have
also-
to increase that 33.5.
Let me unhide something here and bring that back up from the past too, okay? All right. If you look at legal services, we've had situations where we spent more, and we've had, in all honesty, we had some in previous years, I think, where we spent less,
yeah,
okay? They're projecting that they can spend less, even though the contract rolls up to 34,880, that it can be handled for the 33,500. That's what the projections were.
So your default number isn't necessarily what you're asking for. Your
Right.
default number on a contract is what the contract says. Because
And
Yeah,
under
no,
legal,
no.
but under legal services, the way they're saying it, that they don't expect that they will utilize all of it. And if they did, they figure like, as Chief mentioned,
Take it from another
they could get
line.
money from another line item later if they had to. But this was all in trying, and that's the reason I put down what was the updated default, because there were a few others here before. What I wanna do is keep these others hidden so we can see though, for now. But in the interest of us trying to go through where we said we were gonna be tonight though, I wanna do this from the summary, so we look at our summary in comparison, and then I'll go and show the line items there were a couple line items. But I believe we can reach what we said we were gonna reach to come to a vote tonight, minus the insurance and benefits, because of what the changes are. The only difference is, and I wanna show those differences, and then you guys will talk about whether or not we're gonna call for a vote, okay? I'm not gonna push a vote tonight if nobody wants to push the vote to say we're at that point. But, let me come down to where I know the differences were here for a moment, because, okay, one of the first differences here, because I can show you there were some differences in the department summaries. There's been a couple calculations, and in all honesty, when it was written down, it came up and it looked like it said 2679 when it was supposed to be 2674. I know we're only talking about $5, but I'm going with just what the percentages were. And that's because I had seen the handwritten things too. Okay, there were a couple things like that.
so have you changed them
I changed it to the
or-
2674, but Ernie's, I don't think changed yet. That's what I need to
Okay,
meet with him
alright, so
tomorrow.
this is-
I'll be meeting with him when I go to set the final part of this, okay? There were a couple others, there was a couple on there that happened. Same thing here, under the trustee of the trust funds. when they rolled it up, and this is what happened on a couple, it's a 20% increase, but it's only gonna affect 1% of the budget, they put the 20% increase in instead of only 10%. The 2%, excuse me, instead of 1%. Okay, they took the 2% of 20, if you look at what the salary was, is 2310. You take 2% of that's $46, but it's not going into effect until July 1st, so it's only $23 increase, not a $46 increase. So that was a math mistake. It should have,
God, okay.
well,
Yeah, no,
well,
I
that's
hear
why
you.
that's why I let the thing do the calculations. They're small numbers, but as Claudine put it, in the interest of being fair to everyone across the board, before someone says, why did this person get more? Or this position get more, that's what that was. That's where the variation came in. So I'm just trying to show that I know that he's gonna make those adjustments too.
You know what, I have a total curiosity, and maybe you can answer, Claudine. The health insurance increase, what did you guys use for a number, not knowing?
Can-
I'm not sure.
we'll bring, let's wait till we get to that piece of it. I just want to address the changes that took place so that everyone understands. On the cemetery, based on the request that went through, and I know it went through the Board of Selectmen as well, and came through to me, that because the Public Works will not have the manpower to continue the mowing services, they needed to figure out best scenario, guessing at what it would be, and there was a $5,000 increase based on what it's gonna take to maintain it. So that request went in, and I matched the request based on what I was given by the town administrator forwarding that to me, okay?
Humphrey, excuse me.
Yes,
But wouldn't there have been a corresponding decrease in the highway department where they didn't have a van to do the work?
it actually is, because he doesn't have the man, he doesn't have the position filled, but the request for salary still has to be there.
Still there, yeah.
You know, he's gonna need to hire afterwards, but he doesn't have anybody right now.
Would that amount go down?
Hmm?
If he gets that other person hired and in, would that amount go down?
I would say that what it would end up costing the town would be less, but at the same time, the other piece about the cemetery is similar to the sewer. The money's put in, but whatever they need to come back, they get money back, they end up reimbursing the town anyways. So, that's why I agreed, it's like, this is what we did last year too, we just matched what they said they needed for the cemetery. Okay, and I'm gonna just bring down, I think that was it for the major changes. The differences, because what I'm gonna show you is where the summary differences were. Okay? So these are all the big changes. The $74.28 was because of the stipend and the Social Security. The others were pennies, but that's calculation. So there was nothing else different between the two. And I know that Ernie was gonna make the final adjustments once we sat down and talked about the math. That's all it was. But that does not mean, and I did match all the stipends, but the Board of Selectmen won at this point because of, that's why the note was there. Okay? As you can see, $74.59 when you go and roll all of it up was the difference. Being a bottom line budget, and being the fact, and being that we are under, I'm gonna come back to this comment, under the default, I also wanna go back and show you what was done with the outside appropriations, and then we'll talk about the insurance pay. Okay? So the changes in the outside appropriations are all here in yellow, based on the meeting yesterday. So it went from $1 for Stratford cap to $4,000. There was also a title change, a name change on the line item for, where it's now Homeless Center for Stratford County. It had a different name on the line item before, just, okay? It was, so I did change it to make sure it brought it up
And I
to speed.
think the Revolution Food Pantry is under a different name.
It's We Care.
It's We Care and it's been We Care.
Yeah,
I don't know.
and we can do that. It
You've
wasn't,
been asking for a change and it
yeah,
hasn't happened.
no, it hasn't changed yet, but we can adjust that afterwards. I did this because we're giving the money out here, we're not changing the money on the Revolution or the We Care Food Pantry. but it went from $1 at the joint meeting to $500
For, where, oh, the one.
for the homeless center for
Okay.
Stratford County, I'm sorry. Under Haven, it's now $250. Under the Age Response Seacoast, $200. Cornerstone VNA is $3,500. The next two, they didn't change, but I'm gonna read them anyways. Youth Sponsorship Dare is $1,500. Stratford Nutrition and Meals on Wheels is $1,500. The American Legion Post 61 is still $800. The change to CASA went from $1 to $7.50. Wakefield Resource Center still get $1, but I don't think you heard anything back from them at this point, right?
Right.
Okay. Wakefield Food Pantry is still $2,500, and then the American Red Cross request went from $1. Went from $1 to $200 from that. And the Revolution Food Pantry, as soon as we get the right name, we'll put the right name in. But I mean, right now, it's still, that's what's on both documents. So that one's still $4,000. So it did increase, $9,000, almost $400, $393.
Okay, is there a spent, I'm just looking,
Spent, I can bring up here on what we spent in the past. So let me
because I was
unhide.
looking at the decreases from the
Yep.
default and what was
Oh,
there
I can, yeah,
before.
here's what we've had. Let me bring it back down now that I've unhidden, now that I unhide those. I gotta go back down below. And hide the columns. Alright,
Yeah, there it
alright.
is.
We have spent in 2019, $20,553. Projections for right now is 19,701. Okay,
Okay, and I just wanna look at.
so you're
which-
talking about $800 different than what was spent last year.
Alright, I'm looking at each one, we've actually spent Stratford Cap, the 72,500.
Yeah, well, on each one of those, what they requested, what they ended up changing for the thing was spent. So that part,
Right, and this year we're down to
4,000,
4,000.
4,000, right, is proposed
We go from 20, alright, 1,000,
to 500 for the homeless center, from 500 to 250. On
I'm
the,
sorry, you guys know how I feel about all of this in this time of
Nope, I don't, and again,
crisis, and if we have actually spent the money because they requested it,
Yep.
I have a hard time with going from $2,500, $7,500 down to 4,000. So
No. We haven't even addressed it ourselves personally. I'm bringing up what was changed right now.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
still got
well, I know, and I
room to talk
understand
here.
all of the other changes, but
Yep.
that has been a real
That was a sticking point, I know.
hot button for me.
Yep. And that's what we're gonna, my suggestion is that we focus our attention on the areas like that. If that's something we want to address, then we're going to address that now, you know? So,
I mean, but they did increase the second food pantry, cause now there's 2 food pantries, so it's almost like it got readjusted to
Yep.
closer to home, I guess.
Well, both
Because
of
the
them
We
well,
are
Care.
both Wakefield Food Pantry and the We Care or Revolution Food Pantry are supporting the community.
Right, well, that's
So
what I'm saying, but We Care
between
wasn't a
the two-
thing
between the
before,
two,
that's,
yeah,
that's fairly new, so it's,
They increased, if you look at what they did with those two, that right there was actually, and that's a good point, Lisa, because that was 6,000, and it's gone up now to 6,500 between the two.
right.
More here in town for the We Care, and a little less to, actually, it's it's the same as what it was, last year,
And I
as
saw
far
her,
as what
she
was
said that
expended.
they're averaging, about 130, families a week.
Yeah.
Is that gonna take care of them?
Well, Yeah.
The Stratford CAP is funded by many organizations, okay? She gave a great presentation, they have wonderful outlets, they have, resources, they apparently fund over $700,000 to Milton alone. So whether we give them 7,000 or 4,000, it's not gonna stop them from any of their programs for the people that need it.
Yeah, I think they have more access to like grants and stuff
Yeah.
too.
And actually, I know I listened to it that night. They stated that they understand right now because other communities are actually doing the same thing. The reduction, they've gotten that from some of the communities, but they've also they're going after more grant money. So,
And on the, with the building that they have down over there, which was for the, like a daycare facility of some sort, they're actually closed at the Head Start because they had lack of interest. They just didn't have enough support for the town, for the children to be there. So they're closed down and now we're gonna have a building to deal with next year. So,
Yeah,
but
'cause I
they're
went,
not gonna lose much from us not giving them the full 7,000.
because I went to that building last year and met with Betsy, about something else, and they had a full Head Start classroom, so I wonder what happened.
I don't know,
They moved it to
Well,
Farmington.
What?
I'm sure.
They moved it to Farmington.
Yeah.
that's what it was, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
She said
They're
that it was down to like
consolidating a
10
lot of
participants,
places.
so I
Yeah,
don't know personally, but that's what she shared. But the amount that we do provide is not gonna change the level of service they're gonna provide to the people that need it.
But I think that the We Care, I think that that'll make a big impact for them. I think 4,000 is going to really give them,
Right, and that's an increase from where they were. The proposal last year was 25 and it's gone to 4,000 to try to help.
I know when I drive by there, there's a lot going on and it's, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
last week, that
Yep.
parking lot was very full.
okay, Wakefield went down 1,000.
Right, but with the increase going up 1,500 on the one here in
Because
town.
I think a lot of the people that were going to Wakefield are going here.
now.
Because it's closer.
Danielle, you're familiar with the Wakefield one. Is that the case? Do you know?
The one located here in town has drawn in some more of the Milton residents because it's that much closer.
Okay.
For example, folks in West Milton are able to get to the We Care pantry a little bit easier than the Wakefield pantry.
Okay.
But I will also say that the Wakefield Food Pantry donates in all of their, for example, their bread that they can't save for the following week. They bring it right down to the We Care Food Pantry the next day after distribution.
Okay.
So the two are working hand in hand.
Okay, and I'm sure resource-wise and everything else through finances, that would be, they'll work together, so, all right. So the bottom line is between those two, which seems to do quite a bit here for us, it has gone up,
Yes, absolutely.
so.
Okay, and the Center for the Homeless Center,
Mm-hmm.
what do they provide?
They provide the shelter during the winter months, I believe.
Where?
I believe that's in Rochester.
Yeah.
Rochester?
Yep.
Yep.
Alright,
And again, that's another one where money's being donated from each of the communities, grant money and other stuff comes into play. That's what I heard on the presentations.
okay.
Right.
Cause I'm just concerned
if I-
again, the homeless people
Wait,
right
just-
now.
Hold on a second, Danielle.
Mention something.
Yeah, go ahead, Danielle.
Just if I could mention something, because I sat in for I'm on the board of directors for the Wakefield Food Pantry.
Yep.
And at our last directors meeting, it was discussed that even though the 2020 request was submitted, for the town vote as the 2,500, or it was requested for 35, default made it fall to the 25.
25, right.
Their actual submit for actual funding for the 2020 year was only half of that
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't feel COVID related it was appropriate to be asking towns for the full amount because everyone is going through the same difficulties.
Yep.
So you will see on the expenditure report for the entire year expended for the Wakefield Food Pantry, it will not be increasing.
No, that makes sense.
It will be the half amount of what the actual proposed amount was.
Okay.
So even though it was requested, they decided
Not to ask for
we're
a,
all gonna work together and,
Yep.
and fight this together, so.
no, makes
It's
sense.
not that they don't want it, it's not that they don't need it.
Nope.
It's, we're all working together.
Okay. Anything else on that area? Anything else, Peg?
No, just, I would look at the next one down,
The next one down.
welfare, you know, I mean, I know that there is.
Oh, the
no
welfare.
a person
We'll
that's
address,
looking
yeah,
at
we'll address where I'm gonna address what we talked about back then, regardless of whether it says $1 in there or not. If money is needed in there, the money will end up having to be utilized. That was one of the comments. Is that correct, Danielle?
State law, yes.
State law, they're still gonna have to cover it, even, and you just have to figure out where that would come from, so.
Yeah, no, I knew that they'd have to cover it. so
But that's
why-
also the reason why not to drop it out completely. I mean, if there's $1 in there and they need to find money for something, they're gonna have to do something. Now, the big thing on there, of course, obviously, is the salary stuff shifted, and now there's the $6,500 that they're looking at for contract services. But not heard whether that's the final number or not, though, correct?
I'm sorry, for who?
The contract services under welfare,
No.
that's
I think
still
we're
just
gonna-
projected at this point.
Right, we did meet with a gentleman who, you know, provided some ideas, we're just trying to figure out what the final decision's gonna be, so
Okay,
perhaps at the next meeting.
okay, that one we're gonna need to know, because right now, we're somewhere around the 8,200, between $8,200 and $8,300 under the default. If that contract changes, that's gonna lower that number even more, so we need to know where that's gonna be.
Well, if it's a contract, it would be default and proposed, so,
It's kinda, well, we gotta find out what that adjustment's going to be, because it wasn't a contract issue in the past.
but if it becomes a contract,
They're
then it
gonna
goes
have to
into
figure out,
default
they're gonna have
and
to figure out how that all
So-
breaks down, right?
will not make any
I'm assuming
changes.
that legal considered the actual legality of having a contracted service instead of an actual clerk in that
Um,
position. My
yeah.
other, I've said it in the past, is all of your office expenses related to the position. There's not an actual individual in office.
That was dropped down, that was dropped down to $1 just to leave the line item for the training and that. And
Okay.
so that did change. Office supplies, they left information, money in there based on what might be needed in regards to supplies for the contract. They did take the training piece out though, as, that went from the 240. I know that was the question, and they just left it with $1 in the line item.
And then the equipment and mileage, I don't have that.
Yeah, that one still shows the 200 for the equipment and the 100 for the mileage, but that would have to adjust based on the contract. Yes. You don't
I mean,
need,
it's not much, but
no, but that's
if
it, you're,
then it needs to reflect appropriately.
Right. You see the pot right here, Claudine, this is just, so you know where that is, right. Very valid. Okay, what I'd like to do, is go through and go through the department summaries. And let's talk bottom line, because, you wanted to talk insurance and benefits, I'm sorry, Peg, let me get back to that for a moment.
No, it's just a quick.
Well, it's all right, I wanna bring it up, and then that way it's on the screen, because even the public, when this gets submitted, let's see where we're at for insurance and benefits. Where the heck am I? That's up further. Past it. Right in. Okay, so go ahead.
Well, my question to you, Claudine, was, I'm on the board of directors for the insurance school here, and the final rates will be out by November 10th.
Okay.
And it's anywhere from 0 to a max of 9.9%. And they just figured the average would be about 5.1. So I was just asking, do you know what the percentage was that was put in the budget?
I don't know what
Okay.
percentage, that was something Ernie took care of, so
Okay.
I don't know what that amount was.
Alright,
But I
so-
can find out tomorrow and,
yeah, well, you can just relay that information, that it will be definitely out,
Yep.
probably, cause we are meeting on the 4th to
Right.
make the final decision, so. But it depends on the claims,
No, this is true, it's true.
so,
And again, we've said before, whatever it's gonna be under the insurance and benefits, it's gonna go up, it's gonna be part of the default, it's not gonna
and
change.
it'll even out.
If it goes up, it goes up, if it goes down, it goes down, it's not gonna change the bottom line for what we need to do at this point, you know, which is, where are we as, in relationship to the default?
That's if people
Well,
have,
it kind of will, depending on how many plans we have per,
Yeah.
per option. If we're gonna budget for all family plans for 25 employees, then that's gonna change substantially to what it actually is.
No, you're right in that regard, but my point though is whatever they put in for what the proposed budget is will also be the default piece of it, is what I'm driving at. Right? So,
It's,
Well, no, I mean, they can have their default, but we can have our own actual number.
we can come under,
They
yeah,
put
we
in
can
their
come
default
under,
and bump it an extra family, and
And-
we can
and-
look at the actual figures of what the employees currently are taking, and base our calculations off of that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I can see both sides.
no, understand, right now, the only thing that's different though, between the default and the proposed budget is under the property insurance deductions, cause they dropped that, the default's 4,000, they dropped that to $1. Everything else on the plans, the default budget and the proposed budget are the same.
is
So-
there anything, I'm just thinking the buyouts, because I know, you know, if I'm
Well,
taking
I think
a
that's what Danielle's
policy- okay,
addressing.
I know, I'm having,
Yeah, it's tough to hear
Ernie
on
did
this,
say that he was adding an extra buyout because he was removing the plan, so.
yeah, and that's why I don't think they've got the final numbers yet to figure that out, right? So, but we can't change that here.
oh, no,
So-
no, I know, it's
Yeah.
just questions that I'm asking that if it's, because I know we have contractually, if you're not taking the insurance, you know, we have contracts that this is what the buyout is,
Mm-hmm.
and so it goes into the default.
Okay, no, I hear you, that's gonna have to be adjusted. So, why don't we look at, I'm gonna turn to the back of the packet that you handed us, Claudine, which is the summaries, so that we can try to figure out where we're at, and I'm gonna bring our summaries up.
Oh,
Can I get that packet at some point?
Yes, I will bring you a I will get you a copy. I'll have to probably hand it to you with about a 20-foot long pole, but yes,
Come on.
I'll drop it at the end of your driveway. I'll drop it at the end of your driveway. But, yeah, we'll get you a copy. Actually, I'm gonna get it electronically and get it sent out anyways from Ernie, so. It's what I'm gonna, shoot for. Alright, so let's look at, and I wanna make sure that we've got the right default budgets, and that's why on our summary and versus what's here on the screen, was make sure our numbers are the same. So under town administrator, the default shows 288,055. And for 2020 is what I'm looking at.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. And the updated default, this is where I gotta find out what's there's an issue. That was he's got 300,994, and the updated information I have from him shows 300,441, so I'm gonna go and pull that up and see what our difference is. This is the problem with getting the changes the way. So, I've got it on the screen to go through ours. I think the difference is in the social security. Yeah, it is. The difference is in the social security because he had the wrong numbers in there. If you look at that, it showed and as a matter of fact, based on pure calculations, they were still using numbers based, if you look at the default from 2020, and he had the same thing under the 2021, that included salaries that aren't there anymore. So we rolled up the salaries for the part-time originally from last year. It wasn't 6816, it should be 6146, because the only salaries that fit in is the 91,711, the dollar for the part-time line item, and the 6930.
So,
So he had 6816, there's the difference in the numbers for part of it. But he also had 1319 for Medicare, when it should have been 1437, so there were two math things. There's the difference.
so we're going with the 300,994?
We have to go with the calculated one, which I had, which is the 300,441. Because I can't change the calculation to
Well,
fit.
I know, so his is still wrong?
His is wrong, it should be 300,441 for the default.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question to ask here.
Yes.
Are we satisfied with all this here, or there's a couple of things in here?
That's why I'm not satisfied yet, Bob, I wanna go through them, that's what I'm gonna do, if that's what you,
Yeah, but you're going through the numbers here, but there's some things that I'm not satisfied with here.
okay, go ahead, what's your
Well,
point?
line items, there's some line items that I think they need to be changed.
Okay,
Because you're doing this a little different, you know, you put me the final numbers. You wanna go through this first, that's fine. I just wanna know where we stand here, because I'm not satisfied with this.
okay, I guess I wanted to know, if you could clarify what, because
Okay.
we're trying to make the numbers fit, because it's a bottom line budget, and I agree there's some line item things that, but we're not working on every little line item, I'm only trying to fix the calculations.
That's fine, I just wanna know.
I'm not saying that, that's the only thing we're doing, Bob, so what specifically, if you've got a specific comment or question, then I wanna address it.
It's reducing the lines,
It's, pardon me?
reducing some of the lines.
Oh, I wasn't looking, yeah, that
Okay,
part,
that's
no,
fine.
I wasn't looking to reduce. I wasn't, because I think we had already talked about it at the last meeting, that they came in under the default,
So
that
we're
we were not
satisfied.
gonna look to try to cut back all of that.
So we're not gonna adjust any lines.
I'm
Like
not
we
saying
did
we're
the
not
last-
adjusting anything, but our goal wasn't to sit there and start cutting individual line items, it's to make sure that we've got a bottom line budget we agreed to.
You just made up my goal.
Huh?
Okay, that's fine, let's go through it.
Okay. I mean, again, if you've got something very,
No.
you're very feel strong about, I wanna address it.
No,
But-
You kinda made it clear.
Well, I'm only going by what we'd all talked
Yeah.
about, that's all.
Yeah, I just have a problem with trying to vote on, I don't know, which number, I mean, I know you say that your numbers are correct, but I really would like to see everybody's numbers be the
Well-
same rather than.
Well, and again, that's what
That
I'm
would be
trying to work
wonderful.
out with Ernie before we finalize it.
Yeah,
I just
and
want,
that's why
and that's why I
tonight
don't,
it's
I don't
like,
expect we're gonna finalize it all tonight, I'm not
Good,
rushing
okay.
this.
Alright,
And some of that, I think maybe that was before Bob was on, that we had gone through a lot of it too.
Yep.
So,
There,
Yeah.
no, I understand, that's why I'm not trying to cut anyone off on this, I'm just trying to get to where we need to be in the end. The reason I brought this up is I went back to look at these two amounts too, Peg, you know, and that's the reason I'm saying I gotta make sure Ernie adjusts this. The 6816 and the 1319, I went back to look at the calculations, okay? That included, when they did that, the administrator contract as well as part-time position that's no longer there, and he carried it over. As a matter of fact, I can show you because I've kept a running tally on where we're at that you don't have in your handout, but I've got up here. Here's to show the difference. If you see the default budget that was presented to us right up here on the screen, this is what was presented to us and what carried over. Okay?
yeah,
That's what was presented to us on 9/26. And when the proposed budget went through, it was adjusted based on calculations. Well, the default can't be this number if it was miscalculated. That was what I was driving at. So the default has to adjust. Mr. Brown?
Okay, that, in terms of any, we have had, I think, in good, solid detail, the presentations of each of the departments.
Yep.
Showing what the impact of inflation has been,
Mm-hmm.
what the necessities, that's in quotes, plural, of employee retention are, and what the what the default number is.
Mm-hmm.
So, for $10, here we go. $2, $4, $6, $8, $10. 5 positions. 3, 6, 9, 50 cents, 50 cents, $10.
Mm-hmm.
If we agree that the $10 is fair against the $11 of the default,
That's what I'm looking to do,
That's-
exactly.
yeah, and it is, I don't think for goodwill, explanation, and our time, that you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well, I hope not, because I'm trying to keep us on the right path, right?
Yeah, I think that reasonable, if someone in the audience of all 7 people who are not watching NPR, if they can't figure out that the town and this budget committee and the department heads are trying to get the best number they can, we're not gonna gain anything by taking the mythical 37 cents off this or that department.
And thank you, because the only thing that I was trying to show was where our difference was, and our difference was right there in the calculation, okay, on the default. So, with what Larry was saying, and Bob, just to come back to it, we had talked about all of this up front. We tasked in a letter to the Board of Selectmen to find a way to come up with a budget that came in under the default, which they've done, so that we don't get into every line item. That's why I wanted to go through what the bottom line was and see if we in agreement, as Larry said. But because I knew there was a difference in the default from what we have, what I showed and what he had, I just wanted to show where that difference was. Okay? The real issue comes down to is we're not gonna fix the default completely anyways. That will change. That'll get adjusted by Ernie based on the calculations. It's whether we agree with what we think is a sound budget going forward for each of the departments and the bottom line. That's what our role is here. Right?
I mean, I think the only place that would matter is what's in each line is if this got passed and then there was a default budget in the future, then it would affect the lines later.
Well,
If there's,
Not until
well,
the following year.
no.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's and every year is gonna shift a little bit, because like Peg says, that's gonna happen anyways. Defaults are gonna go through. I just wanna make sure as we go into this, because our goal was, we were this close at the last meeting, and I just wanted to go through what the differences were, because I thought that's where we were gonna be, and then say, okay, are we in agreement, yes or no?
I know, but
At
you know
this
what,
point.
that's exactly what you said, and
Yeah.
that was what I expected.
Yeah.
And I'm going through this,
Because
Versus-
yeah, I know, and
and
he's
it's
got
like-
he's got some changes that don't match, and I'm gonna make sure they do when we're done.
can
So-
I make a suggestion then?
I get
We-
those changes with him done before we have one more meeting.
And if we have to have another separate meeting
And that's
to,
fine. I
you know,
don't
half an
disagree.
hour,
just to make it
Yep.
all,
but
Yep.
I just,
Yep.
I mean, I hate to say, yes,
Exactly.
we vote on this
I'm not, that's why I
budget,
said, I'm not asking for a vote tonight, and I agree, and I
but it's
completely
just
concur.
frustrating going through
Okay.
every
And
single.
So why don't we stop for tonight on this? I
Well-
will get with him, hang on a second, and just to present it, I'll get with him to make sure the calculations and that all line up and match. Because I gotta post this too. And I will call for a meeting for us to go through when we get the numbers matched. Make sense?
Thank you.
Okay? Because, yes,
I mean, you
and
can
I know
put a
everyone's
lot of
trying
work
here,
into
I would,
this,
trust
but-
me, I'm frustrated too, because I was meeting yesterday, and then it got changed again last night, and I know there was some changes, and then I found this again. So, all right, it's 8:17, we've gone a little long tonight, and seeing as to how we're going to have another meeting, I will call for a meeting let's come up with what we agreed for on the meeting. I would rather do that before we can try to continue with everything tonight, because it's very difficult when we get to this point. That make sense? To see what we've got for a meeting time frame. All right, let's all get us back on the same page. So November's coming up, yeah, great, I just went to the monthly one. What did I just do? Alright, can't get it to go to the next month. Alright, let's see what we have here. Why can't I get November to come up?
Yeah, I can't either.
I can't get, all of a sudden, November doesn't wanna come up on the calendar.
I haven't.
It's because the election's coming up.
Yeah, it's all ending on November, it's all ending on November 3rd.
Right.
Good point.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm just saying, the calendar my calendar will not go to November. I'm stuck on that 1 week. I don't understand why, but it's fresh. Holy smoke. I can do it here, but I want the month. Alright. I'll try this other calendar, that might make it easier. That one's doing the same thing.
Go to December and work backwards.
No, I got it. No, I got it. Alright.
How'd you do it?
I just went to my other I got 2 different calendars on my computer.
Oh,
Larry, I think is right. Go to December. see
Yeah,
what
in all
happens,
honesty,
and
it
then
might
go
work.
backwards.
Okay, here's what I want us to be able to do so that we can meet what we were trying to meet in the first place, and that's the Thanksgiving time frame. If either late the week of the 9th, which is the week after next, or the Tuesday, the 17th. So I'm looking at probably the 12th or the 17th.
Okay, I can't the 17th.
Okay, then it could be the 12th or the 19th.
Okay, we're gonna have
What's
to.
that, Danielle?
So let's do the 12th. I'm off quarantine. As long as budget committee is following with town policy.
As long as,
I'm out of quarantine.
yeah, no, that'll work. So why don't we shoot for the 12th? If anything has to change, I'll get a hold of everyone. Does that make sense? November 12th being the meeting, that'll be
is
the
that
day.
Thursday?
That's a Thursday. It's this. I don't know if the room's available. I gotta find that out. So I will find that out tomorrow.
Can we have a backup day in case the meeting?
Well, that's why I'm saying either the 12th or November 19th, which would be the following Thursday, because
It's
I
my
can't.
birthday,
Well, happy birthday. We can meet then and you can celebrate.
and you guys can bring me a big cake.
Yeah, we do something. So either the 12th with a backup date of the 19th for the next meeting? As a matter of fact, on my agenda, I had November 12th anyways, figuring, just so you know that, because I wasn't sure, I says, we may have some more issues. So I was shooting for the 12th, and it'll be the backup with the November 19th, okay? So we ran long tonight, and the goal is as I said, I'm gonna get with Ernie, we'll finalize to make sure that the calculations and everything else are right. Then I know you guys are meeting tomorrow. So we should have all this data done by Thursday, so I'll plan on that meeting. And then I will get the sheets back out to everybody. So what we don't have tonight, Peg, we're gonna get to the school report, but we're gonna do that in our meeting coming up. You've already put it out to everybody, but I wanna talk about it, be able to have some time to speak. And we are also gonna have, and we've already gone through all the minutes, but we will go through to get the minutes approved from August 25th, September 16th, October 8th, and also, and the September 26th one. We've got those 4 that we all had drafts and we've all had comments. I didn't have anything else, so I will present them at that point in time. Okay? In closing with the public tonight a little bit here, it was a good presentation from Chief Kraus. Really appreciate the retention plan. We know that that's gonna come forward and that should help us in the long run, but any other business? I wanna go around the room. Peg, anything else for tonight that you have?
No, just the report that,
Yeah, okay, so like I said, we'll table that for that next meeting and we'll have it updated. Hopefully it won't be any more real big changes. Claudine, anything?
I do not have anything, thank you.
Robert? Anything else tonight? No? Larry?
225,000 pounds of
Okay.
Please,
I'm good.
Mike?
No,
Anything?
I'm good.
Danielle, you got anything else?
No.
All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Motion
Second.
from Larry, I get Danielle on the phone beat you to it, so motion from Mr. Brown to adjourn. Second by Danielle Marique, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, guys, thank you. Good night.